A young man huddles behind a pot lid, arrows embedded within it. He gasps in terror as another arrow narrowly whistles past his head. A veteran warrior commends the apprentice for his good reflexes. The warrior then warns him to properly receive the next volley. He explains that a direct hit would have been an instantly fatal wound. The commander stands confidently among his men, who laugh at the situation. The young man, Colt, repeats the commander's grim words in disbelief. His face contorts into a mask of pure terror at the thought. Colt questions why he must fight a war with only kitchenware. The commander scoffs, mocking his inability to afford even a cloth gambeson. He cruelly reminds Colt that he is only worth what he can earn. The commander then roars at his troops to form a shield wall. Colt looks up, startled by the sudden, urgent command. The commander tells him to earn his keep in the war if he has complaints. He sneers at a boy with his gear, is fated for a pointless death. In the distance, a line of enemy archers draws their longbows. The commander bellows a warning that a longbow volley is coming. Colt looks up in horror, unable to believe this is happening. He flinches, squeezing his eyes shut as the arrows begin their descent. A deadly storm of arrows rains down upon the soldier's shield wall. Arrows thud violently against Colt's makeshift pot lid shield. After the volley, the commander and his men cheer their survival. A soldier holds up an arrow that struck his shield, shouting in relief. Colt observes the front line, identifying them as the warriors. He then notices the archers, hidden amongst the other soldiers. He spots the robed magic users in the rear, understanding the formation. He realizes these are the adventurers the goddess had spoken of. He is stunned to see a young woman among the specialized fighters. He stares in disbelief at the female magic user in their ranks. He focuses on her ornate staff and elegant, out-of-place attire. He thinks to himself that a girl is really participating in the battle. She seems to sense his gaze, her large eyes turning toward him. Her expression immediately sours into a glare of pure, utter disdain. She mutters about his unpleasant gaze as he looks away, flustered. Knights on horseback ride past, their armor gleaming in the chaos. The camera pulls back, showing the patchwork army of soldiers and levies. Colt observes that there are surprisingly few heavily armored warriors. A nearby soldier explains that the thick padded coats are cloth armor. A line of soldiers prepares their heavy crossbows for the next exchange. An officer orders the crossbowmen to advance and take aim at the enemy. His face contorted in a ferocious yell, the officer orders them to fire. The crossbowmen unleash their volley with a collective, violent thwack. A crossbow bolt strikes an enemy soldier squarely in the eye. Another soldier is thrown backward, a bolt embedded deep in his throat. Colt stares in shock, his mouth hanging open at the brutal carnage. His eyes are wide with a horror he has never known before. The commander laughs as Colt claps a hand over his mouth, about to be sick. The commander boasts that their city's side is guaranteed to win a crossbow duel. He laughs heartily, asking his men if he is right. Colt clutches his head, feeling dizzy and overwhelmed by the slaughter. He is witnessing death directly for the very first time in his life. A man's life is violently extinguished right before his very eyes. A nearby soldier shouts encouragement as Colt watches a life being lost. The commander mockingly asks if this is his first time seeing someone die. He grins callously, telling the boy that he will get used to it. Colt retches violently, his face a mask of misery and physical revulsion. The scene abruptly shifts to a quiet, modern city street at night. A pedestrian crosswalk signal glows, showing it is safe to walk. A large truck barrels toward the high school student crossing the road. The elderly truck driver stares ahead in wide-eyed, helpless panic. The student, casually sipping boba tea, walks directly into the truck's path. He looks up, only just noticing the impending danger at the last second. Police cars have arrived at the chaotic scene of the accident. The aftermath shows the truck, police, and a dark pool of blood. An officer reports that one male high school student was the victim. The boy's spilled drink lies on the ground, He is unconscious and critical. A bright flash of light signals a transition to an otherworldly place. He floats in a starry void before a goddess, who welcomes him after death. The boy looks up at the divine being, utterly bewildered and lost. The goddess playfully explains that her appearance is based on his imagination. The boy blushes, telling her she can imagine herself however she pleases. She stands over him, preparing to be direct about his grim situation. She states plainly that he is dead, but has earned a chance at reincarnation. He questions the concept of virtue, confused by her divine explanation. The goddess nods, confirming his query with a simple, knowing yes. She explains virtue is a societal grace from living in an advanced country. He realizes his thoughts are being read, and she confirms his suspicion. Holding a glowing orb, she says his grace has earned him a new life. His body begins to dissolve as she explains the soul transfer process. The process will revive a lost life, even if it is in another world. His existing fate will be swapped to complete the reincarnation. His new body appears, an apprentice of the same age and similar name. The goddess reveals his new self is fated to die in just a few hours. He turns his head in shock, a single exclamation point marking his surprise. He looks at her, his expression filled with dawning, absolute horror. He panics, asking what the point is if he is just going to die again. The goddess tells him calmly that their allotted time is now up. He will be reincarnated with all his memories, and he pleads for her to wait. She cheerfully says it is fine. His modern knowledge is a powerful cheat. She will reincarnate him as Colt, an apprentice of the Adventurers Guild. As he is pulled away into light, she wishes him a better life. A flash of light signals his violent return to the other world. His eyes are wide with despair, tears streaming down his grimy face. He is back on the battlefield, lamenting his fate with only a single pot. He screams that his modern knowledge is utterly useless in this situation. The commander, Gotts, looks down at the boy, his expression unreadable. Gotts approaches, mockingly asking if he feels better after having vomited. Colt wipes his mouth, sobbing, as he prepares to face the commander. Gotts watches him, letting out a small, unimpressed sound of contempt. Colt stands and turns to the commander, beginning to speak to him. Colt, his face a mask of anguish, recalls the commander's earlier boast. Gotts, surprised by the boy's question, asks what he's talking about. With a clenched fist, Colt steels his resolve, his frustration boiling over. Tears streaming down his face, he desperately begs the commander to teach him. He frantically asks how their side is going to win the battle. Gotts' eyes widen, shocked by the sudden, desperate fire in the boy. The commander wonders aloud what has gotten into the young apprentice. Colt explains that he must understand this world if he is to survive. He declares fiercely that he refuses to die without understanding why. Gotts' expression shifts from surprise to a thoughtful, appraising stare. With a final, desperate plea, Colt begs the commander for his help. Gotts stands before his men, having made a decision about the boy. With a manic grin, Gotts agrees, energized by Colt's fighting spirit. He explains that in terms of quality, both sides are essentially equal. He tells a wide-eyed Colt to take a closer look at the battlefield. A wide shot reveals that their own army is significantly larger. Browerbur produces so many crossbows, he explains, that even militia are armed. He rallies his men, telling them their turn to fight is coming soon. Colt realizes with a jolt that many of these soldiers are just citizens. His eyes narrow with grim determination. The real battle starts now. A nearby soldier shouts that their commander is the guildmaster. From a watchtower, a cry goes up that the enemy is advancing. Gotts smirks, saying a line of mere militia is nothing to fear. Colt is horrified, realizing the citizens are being used as human shields. A caption formally introduces Gottfried von Brauerberg, the adventurer's guildmaster. Colt is stunned that the guildmaster is fighting on the front lines. Gotts takes a firm, decisive step forward, ready to meet the charge. He rallies his adventurers, saying this is no different than a goblin hunt. He explains the vanguard will hold the line against the enemy's push. The rear guard will then move up to strike from the created gaps. A crossbowman is shown, ready to fire from behind the shield wall. God commands them to strike without hesitation from the openings. A high-ranking knight orders his men not to let the line break. He announces that this quest includes an excellent special detachment. The Margrave's personal knights, a powerful cavalry unit, are revealed. Gotz orders the citizen militia to fearlessly break the enemy's ranks. He turns and yells out the name of the young mage, Iris. He tells her to conserve her magic until he's in serious trouble. Iris, identified as the mediocre, agrees with a determined yes. Gotz then points a gauntlet finger directly at the apprentice Colt. He gives Colt his first order, protect Iris during her spellcasting. Colt, holding his pot, accepts the mission with a firm yes. He awkwardly tells Iris that he will be counting on her. Iris stares back at him, her expression completely devoid of enthusiasm. She turns away with a huff, clearly annoyed by her new bodyguard. A fully armored knight addresses the troops, saying that is all. He states that, as always, he will simply cut and cut again. He leads the charge, roaring that the enemy has finally arrived. The two armies collide in a thunderous, chaotic clash of steel. The knight's sword is a blur as it slices through an enemy soldier. He effortlessly cuts down his first opponent with a single, clean strike. He moves through the battlefield, a whirlwind of deadly, efficient motion. Another enemy falls to his blade as he continues his lethal dance. He blocks a strike and delivers a fatal counterattack without pause. He brutally impales another soldier, his movements economical and deadly. The knight stands victorious over a fallen enemy, his sword bloodied. Through his helmet's visor, he calmly counts his second kill. He continues his rampage, cutting a swath through the enemy lines. Colt watches in awe, amazed by the knight's incredible swordsmanship. His reverie is broken as an enemy soldier charges him with a spear. He barely manages to block the spear thrust with his pot-lid shield. The force of the blow sends a jolt through him, but he holds firm. The enemy soldier grins menacingly as he presses his brutal attack. The knight dispatches his third and fourth opponents in a single motion. He stands over another victim, his dominance on the battlefield absolute. Colt, flushed with excitement, thinks the guild master is incredibly cool. Iris snaps at him, trying to get his attention amidst the chaos. She scolds him for daydreaming and tells him not to leave a gap. Colt snaps back to reality, acknowledging her urgent command. His eyes widen in alarm as he sees the unfolding danger. The guild master, Gotz, is being pushed back by several enemy soldiers. Gotz struggles to hold his ground against the overwhelming numbers. Colt and Iris realize with horror that an enemy has broken through. Iris mutters that talking to Colt gave the enemy an easy opening. She raises her staff, calling upon the destructive power of fire. With a final, powerful cry, she commands the spell to burn. A massive fireball erupts, incinerating the soldier who broke through. Colt stares, awestruck by the raw, destructive power of magic. He looks down at his own gear, feeling completely useless in comparison. He curses his own inadequacy, calling himself a pathetic apprentice. He laments that all he can do is stand there with his pot. Gotz taunts the enemy line, saying their gear and morale are pathetic. A new, imposing figure emerges from the enemy ranks to challenge them. A knight in ornate armor declares he will put down these rabid dogs. He introduces himself as Ulrich von Torgau, a knight of Koenig. Gotz steps forward, demanding that the enemy knight state his name. He introduces himself as Gottfried von Brauerberg, the guild master. Gotz mockingly calls Ulrich an imperial dog, suggesting they get along. Ulrich scoffs at the idea of fighting mere half-baked adventurers. Enraged by the insult, Ulrich raises his massive axe to strike. The two commanders clash in a shower of sparks, their duel beginning. The nearby soldiers watch in awe, cheering for their guild master. Colt watches the duel, his attention completely fixed on the fierce fight. The Silent Knight observes, noting he can see all of Yurik's moves. He predicts that the enemy commander will be dead in one more exchange. The two champions continue their fierce duel in the center of the battle. Yurik, from within his helmet, seems to acknowledge the knight's gaze. He challenges the knight, asking if he can truly see his axe's path. He declares that if they can't see it, he'll just have to show them. Yurik begins a massive, telegraph swing with his two-handed axe. The Silent Knight observed the duel, noting the enemy's foolishly wide swing. Guildmaster Gotts braced himself, planting his shield to receive the telegraph blow. But the enemy commander, Yurik, roared that his opponent couldn't possibly miss the real trick. From Yurik's shadow, a hooded assassin lunged forward, a wicked dagger in hand. From the back lines, Iris and Colt watched the treachery unfold in horror. Ambush! They screamed in unison, their voices lost in the din of battle. Gotts, his vision obscured by his shield, was completely unaware of the true threat. Colt saw it instantly. The shield had created a fatal blind spot. Iris began an incantation, but knew a full chant would be too slow. Colt realized with dawning horror that her magic would not be in time. If she couldn't act, then the only one who could possibly move now was... A fire of desperate resolve ignited in Colt's eyes. "Is an apprentice in pot armor the only one?" he roared, breaking into a sprint. He charged forward, letting out a primal, wordless scream to draw attention. The assassin closed the final inches, his dagger poised to strike Gotts. As a distraction, Colt hurled his ladle with all his might. He threw himself forward, thrusting his pot lid between the assassin and his target. The dagger met the lid with a deafening clang. Its killing blow stopped cold. Thrown off balance, the assassin stumbled back in disbelief. The unexpected sound of impact caught the Silent Knight's attention. Through his helmet's visor, a flicker of surprise registered in his eyes. For a brief moment, the knight's gaze met Colt's determined stare. Colt's own expression hardened from fear into a defiant rage. He swung the heavy iron pot in his other hand like a brutal mace. "Damn it," the assassin snarled, enraged that he had been thwarted. Colt roared back, asking why this was happening. He put all his strength into the swing, declaring that was his line. The pot crashed into the assassin's head with sickening, final force. The assassin's legs buckled beneath him, his attack utterly broken. The enemy commander, Yurik, faltered as his perfect trap was sprung. The assassin collapsed to his knees, weakly pleading for his life. Gotts, now free, ran Yurik through, telling him to shut up and die. Colt stared, the reality of death in this other world crashing down. He looked at the corpse, realizing with a shudder that he had killed someone. Suddenly, his attention was drawn by a strange light. The pot in his hand was glowing, its inner surface covered in magical runes. "It's glowing!" he exclaimed, his shock momentarily overriding his fear. He looked back to the main battle, which had decisively turned. Gotts stood victorious over the body of the enemy commander. He raised his bloodied sword, declaring that Lord Torgau had been slain. The enemy line broke, their will to fight completely shattered. What was once a battle devolved into a chaotic, one-sided rout. A nearby soldier cheered that they had won and were surrounding the enemy. Gotts turned his head, his gaze finding the stunned apprentice. A wide grin spread across his face as he gave Colt a hearty thumbs up. Colt could only stare back, completely speechless. A blush of pride spread across his grimy face as he managed a yes. Gotts laughed, praising his reply and roaring for another round of battle. He rallied his troops, ordering them to begin the mopping up operation. Colt was swept along, amazed at the sheer toughness of the Adventurers Guild. "Let's go," Gotts roared, and Colt joined the charge with renewed vigor. The adventurers mercilessly cut down the fleeing enemy soldiers. Iris unleashed a powerful torrent of magic, incinerating a fleeing combatant. The Silent Knight moved like a phantom of death, his blade a blur. The battle pastor Martina struck down a foe with a blast of holy light. Gotz himself dispatched the last pocket of organized resistance. He stood over the fallen, his voice ringing with finality. This is the end. A massive cheer erupted from the victorious army of Browerberg. Gotz announced that the Margrave had declared a great victory for their side. The citizen militia, their faces alight with joy, roared their approval. Gotz scoffed at their childish excitement, feigning impatience. He ordered them to hurry and take their share of the spoils of war. He then directed the adventurers, reminding them to take up to 3 items each. The professional warriors let out a cheer of their own. Their cry of "We Sioux" echoed across the blood-soaked field. Colt stood amidst the piles of discarded equipment, lost in thought. He carefully considered his options, his survival paramount. He could choose 3 items, a mix of weapons and armor. For now, he decided he would stick with the pot as his weapon. He knew that, to survive, excellent defensive gear was an absolute necessity. He had learned his pot lid was no substitute for a proper shield. He patted his chest, realizing his torso was another vulnerable area. He strapped on a vambrace, knowing his arms needed protection as well. Fully armored, he panicked, realizing his legs were completely exposed. He fretted that 3 pieces of gear were not nearly enough protection. Gotz approached, asking the apprentice why he was struggling with his choice. Colt sheepishly admitted that he honestly didn't know what to pick. Gotz noted he was a close combat fighter and had just the thing. He presented Colt with a wide-brimmed metal helmet. It was a kettle hat, he explained, perfect for adventurers due to its wide view. He sternly advised Colt to always prioritize protecting his head in a fight. The enemy, he warned, would always aim for an instant, fatal blow. He admitted the helmet was an old model, but not a bad choice. Colt worried about its age, but Gotz told him to buy a new one later. The guild master asked about the pot lid, which Colt said wasn't useful. Gotz then gave him a large wooden kite shield, saying it would suffice. He instructed Colt on its use, telling him to protect what was exposed. He demonstrated a proper stance, ordering him to keep the shield forward. It was not perfect, he said, but it was gear that prioritized defense. Colt understood. It was about practical use, not just equipment quality. Their training was interrupted by a messenger from the Margrave. The day's operations were over. All units were to return to their lodgings. Gotz noted there would be no pursuit, which was for the best. He turned to his adventurers, telling them it was time to head home. A sly grin spread across his face as he promised them a great reward. "It's time for a feast," he roared, and the guild erupted in cheers. The victorious army marched back towards the walled city of Browerberg. They arrived at the grand, timber-framed Adventurers Guild headquarters. Colt wiped a tear from his eye, moved by the promise of his first real meal. Inside the bustling hall, he cheered, "Long live the guild." A veteran adventurer sits at a table, crediting Colt for their ability to be there. He then turns Colt away, saying the seats are reserved for his party members. Colt realizes with a nervous sweat that this cold reception is meant just for him. He tries another table, but a woman coldly informs him that it's also full. He wonders what on earth his past self did to earn such universal scorn. His eyes scan the raucous hall, searching for any available seat at all. He suddenly spots a familiar figure, his eyes widening in recognition. It's the young spellcaster, Iris, sitting by herself at the end of a bench. He is captivated by her beauty, noticing her fair skin and delicate features. He realizes he never noticed on the battlefield that she looked like an angel. Blushing, he corrects himself, thinking she must be a beautiful elf. His gaze lingers on the intricate, diamond-patterned design of her attire. Sensing his stare, she turns and asks him sharply what he wants. Completely flustered, he waves his hands frantically, unable to form a coherent sentence. He manages a strained smile, trying to compliment her on a job well done. He bows his head, mortified, thinking this whole exchange is a complete disaster. Iris looks at him with surprise, remarking that he seems a little different now. He laughs it off, saying it's the first time she's ever acknowledged his work. She looks away, blushing slightly, and admits that he really did help her. He recalls the moment he save her from the assassin with the halberd. She offers a genuine smile, thanking him and admitting she wouldn't have been in time. Her radiant smile leaves him completely stunned and blushing furiously. He sheepishly admits it was a fluke, as it was his very first battle. Iris looks confused, stating she heard he could use magic and had fought before. Panic flashes across his face as he realizes his secret is in jeopardy. This is bad, he thinks. He didn't inherit any of the original cult's magic. Guts enters the hall, greeting his men, who cheer for their guild master. Cult and Iris are startled by the guild master's boisterous arrival. Guts raises a huge tankard, proposing a toast to their survival and God's grace. Standing on a bench, he leads the entire hall in a thunderous cheers. Swept up in the moment, Cult and Iris both raise their mugs to drink. He sputters, shocked to discover the frothy contents of his mug are beer. Guts reports that the Margrave scouts confirmed they routed 3,500 enemies. He declares the victory was thanks to the tireless efforts of every guild member. He looks upon his men with pride, acknowledging their valiant performance. A man in the crowd announces that tonight, they will introduce a true hero. Guts gestures dramatically, preparing to reveal the hero of the hour. His gauntlet hand points directly towards the unsuspecting Cult at the back. He grandly introduces the hero of the pot, Cult, who looks utterly horrified. The other adventurers murmur in disbelief, one calling him a worthless piece of crap. Guts insists that, unbelievable as it seems, Cult saved all their lives. The men are shocked, wondering how this could possibly be true. Guts recounts the moment an assassin tried to stab him during his duel. He explains how Cult swung his pot, knocking the dagger aside and saving him. He concludes that Cult saved not just his life, but everyone's. The men are stunned into silence, one of them asking if it's really true. Another realizes that if Guts had fallen, the entire battle line would have collapsed. Guts pushes the stunned Cult forward, telling the hero of the pot to speak. Cult stammers, completely overwhelmed by the sudden, intense attention. The chapter title, The Spoils of Victory, appears. The entire hall falls silent, all eyes fixed expectantly on Cult. A look of desperate inspiration flashes in his eyes. He stands, clenching his fist, and declares he has an announcement to make. Guts gives him a curious, sideways glance, wondering what he will say. Iris watches from her seat, her face a mask of wide-eyed surprise. He takes a deep breath and shouts that he has amnesia. His declaration sends a wave of stunned silence through the guild hall. Guts stares down at him, completely taken aback by this unexpected turn. Cult insists that while they may not believe him, he truly remembers nothing. The men murmur, one wondering if it's true, another calling him a work of art. One man jokes that he's the first person he's met to claim amnesia. A woman notes that his attitude and speech patterns are completely different now. A man agrees, saying the old Cult had the eyes of a stray dog. Guts grins, saying he understands, and tells everyone to grab their mugs. He toasts the amnesiac's martial feats, praising the hero of the pot. He declares the speech is over and tells them all to drink and be merry. He tells them to eat, shit, and sleep, the simple life of an adventurer. Later, Iris quietly asks if his story about amnesia was actually true. He confirms it is, which is why he knows nothing of magic or combat. She looks at him with sympathy, realizing he's been through a great ordeal. She then remembers, asking if his pot glowed when he defeated the assassin. He snaps his fingers, recalling that it did glow, but only for a moment. Since he lost his memories of magic, she asks to inspect the pot. Her eyes widen in shock as she sees the intricate runes inside. She exclaims that it has multiple enchantments, applied with an advanced technique. Holding the pot, she asks him to explain what these enchantments mean. He pleads with her to explain it instead, as it would be a huge help. She explains simply that enchanting is a technique for adding magic to items. The pot has 16 defense enchantments, a feat that should be impossible. More disturbingly, there are other mysterious enchantments in another location. She admits that despite her training, She cannot decipher these strange runes. She becomes flustered, wondering why anyone would enchant a simple cooking pot. Colt sheepishly admits that he has absolutely no idea either. She remembers his amnesia and realizes, of course, he wouldn't know. She theorizes the glow came from 32 layers of unknown enchantments. She warns that such an unknown artifact could get him accused of witchcraft. Colt pales with terror at the very thought of a witch trial. Iris smiles, telling him it was just a joke to test his sense of humor. She advises against showing it to others, but admits her own deep curiosity. He shyly calls her name, and she turns to ask him what he wants. He raises his mug, thanking her for everything and proposing a toast. After a moment's pause, a warm and genuine smile spreads across her face. She agrees to his toast, though she thinks he's getting a bit carried away. Outside, the timber-framed guild hall rests under a vast, starry night sky. Inside, Gotts laughs heartily, sharing a drink with one of his men. Colt and Iris approach him to say they are leaving for the night. Gotts points them to the dorms on the second floor, telling them to rest. On the stairs, Colt remarks that the guild master is surprisingly kind and friendly. Iris points out his room, telling him she'll see him at worship tomorrow. Exhausted from the long day, Colt lets out a huge yawn and bids her good night. Colt cautiously peeks through the heavy wooden door of his new room. He surveys the cluttered attic space, remarking that it's quite messy. Sitting on the bed, he concedes that at least he has a roof. He collapses onto the mattress, thinking this is thanks to the original Colt. Before sleep takes him, he decides he must be grateful for this life. He sleeps soundly on the floor, surrounded by the quiet disarray. The morning sun illuminates the timber-framed rooftops of the Adventurers Guild. Iris, dressed in simple clothes, walks out onto a wooden balcony. She looks over the railing, noticing clouds of dust rising nearby. Peeking around a corner, she calls to Colt that the worship service is starting. Her eyes suddenly widen in comical shock at what she sees. Colt is vigorously beating a dusty cloth with his pot and ladle. He greets a surprised Iris with a cheerful good morning, holding up the cloth. She asks if that's a proper use for a pot. He explains the room was dirty. He asks about the service, and she says he doesn't need to use honorifics. As they walk, Iris explains the vile faith's custom of attending church. Colt thinks it sounds nice, like a family going to a shopping mall. Iris clarifies that for the guild, the service is held in the main hall. They enter the hall, which Colt recognizes as the site of the previous night's feast. Guild Master Gotts sits on a large chair, his expression uncharacteristically serious. Colt and Iris approach their commander and wish him a good morning. Gotts looks up, acknowledging them with a simple, quiet grunt. He tells them the service will begin soon and to find a seat. They take their places on a bench among the other solemn guild members. Colt whispers to Iris that the atmosphere feels completely different from last night. Iris agrees, noting that this somber mood is unusual for their gatherings. A woman in a nun's habit walks to the front of the hall. A caption identifies the beautiful but stern woman as Battle Pastor Martina. She begins the service, thanking the adventurers for their efforts in battle. With a warm smile, she tells them that they all fought very well. Colt recognizes her with a start, realizing she was on the battlefield. She holds up a religious symbol and invites them all to pray together. The adventurers bow their heads as she begins the prayer to their god. Colt awkwardly clasps his hands, trying his best to follow along. Martina preaches that their god sometimes takes the form of a simple farmer. She continues, saying their god also appears as a woman at a well. Colt is shocked, wondering if this shape-shifting god is the one he met. Her sermon speaks of the god taking on the form of the lowliest people. She wipes a tear from her eye, moved by the thought of her god's suffering. Colt and Iris watch, surprised by her sudden display of deep emotion. She says their duty is to end the strife that their god witnesses. Her expression hardens as she proclaims they are threatened by the old faith. Colt reacts with shock at the sudden, intense shift in her sermon. She describes how the old faith persecutes elves and other non-human races. She concludes by praying that their enemies will awaken to the true faith. As the service ends, Gotts rises and walks to the front of the hall. He thanks Martina and announces that he will take over from here. As Martina steps aside, Gotts tells everyone to listen up. He declares that he will now be talking about the war. He stands before the adventurers, ready to deliver his war counsel. He reveals that the enemy they routed was not the main army. Colt is stunned to learn they only fought a detached unit. Gotts explains the enemy used the decoy to buy time for reinforcements. A map illustrates how the decoy unit's retreat slowed their own advance. Some adventurers scoff, thinking the enemy pathetic for having to run. Gotts counters that it means the enemy has regrouped with their main force. He reveals the enemy now numbers a terrifying 15,000 soldiers. The adventurers look horrified, realizing that massive army is marching on them. Gotts pauses, a cunning glint in his eye before saying, but he holds up two fingers, cheerfully announcing there are two pieces of good news. The adventurers look up, surprised and hopeful at his sudden declaration. A map shows the Margrave's cavalry raiding the enemy supply lines. Gotts explains this will force the enemy to fight with reduced strength. He steps forward decisively, ready to explain the guild's new role. He declares that they will hunt the scattered enemy foraging parties. He says that, thankfully, they have been given permission for this operation. He rallies the troops, telling them all to get fired up for a fight. He gives the order to depart for Heidi Village at 1300 hours. An adventurer jokes about calling a military march a picnic on a holiday. Two excited adventurers realize Gotts has almost forgotten something important. Gotts announces it's time to distribute their pay and spoils of war. He tells them to use the money to prepare well for the journey ahead. Iris approaches Colt, who has been waiting for her on a bench. She proposes they form a temporary party, with her as the leader. She triumphantly holds up a heavy pouch, their combined pay for two people. She says she trusts him to split it fairly, and he readily agrees. She lays out the coins, 1 silver, plus 2 silver and 8 bronze. Colt is thrilled, feeling as though it's his first real paycheck. He asks Iris how much the money is actually worth in this world. A diagram explains the economy, for bronze coins can buy a day's food. Colt remarks that his weekly wage isn't very much, and Iris agrees. He calculates the total is about 24,000 yen, a paltry sum for their risk. Iris explains the bounty for a single mount at night is 1 gold coin. Colt is shocked, realizing a gold coin is worth over 500,000 yen. Iris asks if he's motivated now, and he agrees they should go shopping. They walk through the bustling city market, filled with merchants and shoppers. At a stall, they pick out some fresh, round loaves of bread. At another stall, they buy a sturdy travel bag and a water skin. Iris holds out a few coins to pay, as Colt looks on. The city gates creak open, revealing chickens in a wooden cage. A long column of soldiers and adventurers marches out from the city. Iris and Colt, now equipped for the journey, look tired from walking. Colt asks why they aren't riding in a cart, while Iris worries about exhaustion. Iris complains that they've only walked a short while, and she's already tired. A close-up shows her boot sinking into the soft, muddy ground. Colt realizes everyone else is tough, and that he needs more stamina. He struggles to keep up, thinking that he isn't very lucky. At dusk, a commander raises his fist, signaling a halt for the day. Colt and Iris collapse to the ground, spent, as the camp is set up. The veteran soldiers efficiently clear brush and pitch their tents for the night. Colt diligently clears the tall grass, seeing even simple chores as valuable training. By the fire, Iris sighs contentedly, commenting on the pleasant warmth. Colt leans back, agreeing the heat is a perfect remedy for his fatigue. Iris turns to him with a gentle smile, calling out his name. She holds up fresh vegetables, suggesting he makes soup in his famous pot. Colt looks at her, playfully asking what it is she wants from him. He grins, offering to explain the pot's use since she is the leader. Iris laughs, retracting her question and noting their limited supplies for the meal. They begin cooking together, with Colt yelping as the pot becomes hot. A close-up shows Iris's hands skillfully slicing strips of bacon. As Colt stirs the pot, Iris carefully adds seasoning to their soup. The soup finally comes to a rolling boil, signaling that it's ready. They admire their meal. Colt wishes for sausage, but Iris calls it a good ration. Colt beams, declaring it looks delicious and is far better than just bread. Iris agrees with a pleased, blushing smile, saying it is wonderful. With bread ready, Colt announces that it is finally time to eat. Iris clasps her hands in prayer, giving thanks for their daily bread. Following her example, Colt also clasps his hands in a moment of grace. As Iris lifts the pot, Colt is horrified she intends to eat directly from it. She takes a sip from the pot, asking if this is what he usually does. Her eyes suddenly fly open in utter shock from an unexpected sensation. She holds the pot, confused. Colt asks her what is wrong. She explains that she can feel a strange magical power flowing into her body. Stunned, Colt demands to try the soup and feel the magic himself. He holds the pot, his eyes wide as he feels the same powerful surge. They look at each other, both realizing the pot must be the cause. Colt muses that it's a strange power, but it doesn't feel evil. Iris listens to him, her expression thoughtful and deeply curious. She suggests that maybe it's best not to serve food from the pot. With a smile, she decides it's fine for now and suggests they get some sleep. Colt looks concerned, calling out to Iris before she can settle down. He asks if she has a tent, admitting he didn't bring any bedding. Surprised, Iris asks if he has no sleeping bag, admitting she doesn't either. She blushes with embarrassment, apologizing for forgetting to tell him. He insists it's fine, saying he can just sleep anywhere on the ground. Iris fiercely objects, saying as leader she can't let him catch a cold. She sits and holds her cloak open, telling him to hurry and get inside. Colt is completely flustered by her surprisingly bold invitation. She asks what he's waiting for, but he remains frozen in shock. She insists he hurry, complaining that her body is getting cold. Completely at a loss for words, Colt can only stammer in response. He lies beside her as she warns she will burn him if he tries anything. He nervously promises that he would never do something like that. Lying stiffly beside her, he uncertainly calls out her name. She explains she wouldn't do this if he were still his old, untrustworthy self. Colt is surprised by her words, asking what she means by that. She tells him this is a sign of her complete trust in the new him. She looks at him earnestly, pleading with him not to betray that trust. He is deeply moved by her sincerity, his face flushing in the dark. He understands her meaning and agrees, and they settle under the cloak. Iris yawns and wishes him a good night before quickly falling asleep. He is left wide-eyed, stunned to be sharing a cloak with the sleeping Iris. He blushes, realizing how pleasant the scent of her hair is so close by. A sudden, startling thought occurs to him as he lies there. He realizes with dawning horror he has to endure this all night long. He resigns himself to what will surely be a very long, sleepless night. The bright morning sun hits his face, waking him with a jolt. He stretches mightily, amazed that he slept so well after all. He greets Iris, who covers her mouth as Gotts appears beside them. Gotts and his men are squatting there, asking if they enjoyed their night. The female adventurers tease Iris for being surprisingly bold with Colt. Mortified, Iris and Colt frantically insist that it is all a misunderstanding. Gotts just smiles slyly, saying that he understands completely. Colt continues to try and explain the innocent situation to his guildmaster. Gotts speculates that she shared her warmth since Colt had no bedding. Iris admits that is mostly correct, but finds his phrasing very annoying. Gotts tells Colt he needs to answer just one question. Colt agrees. Giving a thumbs up, Gotts asks if Iris's warmth was the best. Iris screams. An officer is heard in the background, ordering the troops to move out. Iris grumbles that those men always seem to have fun with crude jokes. Colt looks on, a bit bewildered by the entire exchange. Iris warns that they must avoid any actions that could be misunderstood. She suggests they walk apart for a while, and Colt readily agrees. Colt thinks to himself that none of this was his fault at all. A view of the adventurers' camp at night, showing a supply wagon. Another view of the camp supplies under the vast, starry sky. The adventurers gather around their campfires for the evening meal. The next morning, Iris sips from a water skin while Colt eats. Colt takes a drink from his pot and feels a sudden jolt of surprise. He tells Iris he doesn't feel the same flow of magic as last night. Iris insists he try it anyway, not wanting to draw attention to them. She peers into the pot herself, confirming she feels nothing this time. Gotts approaches, teasing them for sharing a pot like young lovers. He asks about Colt's new fur pelt, joking about Iris's warmth. Gotts's expression turns serious as he tells them to set the jokes aside. He informs Colt that he is going to train him, much to Colt's surprise. Gotts warns that the next battle will be a chaotic, messy brawl. Colt is shocked by the guild master's grim prediction for the fight. Gotts orders him to grab his shield and pelt and to follow him. A narrow panel simply reads, "All right." Gotts approves of Colt's defensive stance, saying it's good enough. He then moves to a fence, reminding Colt that his weapon is the pot. He explains that a pot is a simple weapon that will deal damage on impact. He illustrates how blunt weapons neutralize armor through sheer, crushing force. He admits there isn't enough time to teach Colt the proper techniques. Gotts's eyes gleam with intensity, saying this is where he comes in. He draws his sword, announcing that he will teach Colt one crucial trick. Colt pants with exhaustion as Gotts declares he's ready for a real battle. He remembers to care for his pelt, as it can block light slashes. Gotts tells him to rest and prepare his body to survive. Colt agrees. In the small, fortified village of Heidi, a meager army gathers for a desperate defense. Colt asks Iris if this is their entire force. She confirms and begins to explain. She points out the most impressive unit, the Margrave's 50 elite armored cavalrymen. Next, she identifies the 100 well-equipped, professional mercenaries hired for the battle. She adds that there are only 30 adventurers from their own guild present. Finally, she counts a mere 10 armed volunteers from Heidi Village itself. Colt realizes they are severely outnumbered and begins to worry about their chances. A cold knot of anxiety tightens in his stomach as he considers the odds. A regal figure on a magnificent white horse rides forward to address the troops. The Margrave, Friedrich von Plassenberg, thanks the assembled men for their hard work. Colt, surprised, turns to Iris and asks her to identify the important-looking nobleman. The Margrave reports the enemy numbers 200, but insists they have the terrain advantage. He vows to make the land fertile with the blood of the Old Faith's followers. Colt panics at being outnumbered again, but the Margrave continues his rousing speech. His expression hardens as he prepares to reveal the specifics of the operation. He explains the plan. The infantry will hide in the houses and ambush the enemy. He then entrusts command of the infantry force to his brother, Gottfried von Brauerberg. Gotts accepts the heavy responsibility with a simple, confident acknowledgement of the order. Colt is stunned that such an important nobleman is fighting alongside common adventurers. He reels, finally realizing the crude guild master is the Margrave's younger brother. Gotts immediately takes command, ordering the infantry to the church for a briefing. The stone church at the village center will serve as their command post. With a creak of old wood, Gotts strides into the church's main hall. The terrified villagers rejoice, believing reinforcements have finally arrived to save them. They surge forward, their voices a chorus, desperately pleading for the soldiers' help. Seeing their desperation, Iris whispers that this is a battle they absolutely cannot lose. Colt looks on with grim resolve and quietly agrees with her assessment. The local magistrate, a knight named Albin von Baden, formally introduces himself. He gestures to the armed men behind him, identifying them as local volunteers. These men have risen up, refusing to simply hand their village over to invaders. Albin declares that he shares their feelings and will make the enemy pay dearly. Gotts thanks Albin for his support and invites him to the strategy meeting. From the church tower, The two commanders survey their makeshift battlefield below. God states that their combined force of 143 men will face the invaders. A map details the plan: ambush from the houses and cut off any retreat. The strategy is a simple but brutal coordinated strike from multiple directions. God concludes his orders for the various parties involved in the ambush. He then tells Colt and Iris that they will remain under his direct command. God asks Iris how many spells she can cast. She holds up 5 fingers. He tells her to fire 4 shots in rapid succession on his signal. Iris listens intently, her expression a mask of focused concentration and readiness. Colt and the militia will then charge out to meet the enemy head-on. With a predatory smile, he says there is one thing left to do now. His face twists into a savage grin as he declares they will slaughter them all. The adventurers roar their approval, their morale soaring with his brutal confidence. Soon, the enemy column rides into the village, led by their arrogant commander. The knight, Arner von Nuss, demands to see the village elder at once. A frail, elderly man hobbles out from the church to meet the knight. The elder nervously asks the knight to state his business in their small village. Arner introduces himself and demands the village hand over all of its food. The elder protests, explaining that without their harvest, the people will starve. Arner coldly states he doesn't care, threatening to execute them all as heretics. With a lecherous grin, he also demands they bring out their young, good-looking women. The old man stands in stunned silence, horrified by the knight's cruel depravity. From her hiding spot, Iris watches the scene unfold, her hand tightening. Her face is a mixture of shock and disgust at the enemy's casual cruelty. The elder, defeated and seeing no other choice, agrees to comply with the demands. He promises to make preparations at once and begins to shuffle slowly away. Arner smirks, warning the elder that he is not a patient man. The old man scurries away as the knight watches him with utter contempt. Suddenly, a massive fireball erupts from a rooftop, engulfing the arrogant knight. A subordinate screams his name as the adventurer's war cry echoes. Charge! The enemy soldiers are thrown into chaos, realizing they have walked into an ambush. The battle begins in earnest as the adventurers cut down the surprised soldiers. Iris unleashes another spell, burning an enemy soldier to a blackened crisp. A villager directs the other non-combatants toward the relative safety of the church. A mounted knight spots Colt and charges, his lance leveled at the apprentice. Colt realizes this is the knight worth a fortune in bounty money. With the thought of 1 gold coin in his mind, he charges forward. The knight meets his charge, thrusting his long lance with deadly intent. Colt barely blocks a blow from a foot soldier, grunting at his opponent's strength. The soldier curses, calling Colt a damn pothead for his crude, makeshift armor. A villager, fighting for his home, drives his weapon through an enemy soldier. A nearby adventurer smiles, telling the brave villager that he did a good job. An enemy officer sees the chaos and broken command, ordering a full retreat. He orders the vanguard to tighten the encirclement to cover their escape. The disciplined rear guard prepares to hold the line against the adventurer's assault. He tells his rear guard to watch for breakthroughs and protect their retreat. The enemy soldiers chant a war cry, trying to bolster their failing morale. The officer mutters that they are fools for wanting to die in this place. He decides he won't die in this worthless village for some meaningless prize. The clash of steel echoes as the two sides meet in a brutal melee. God spots Iris preparing a spell and roars for her not to move. A soldier charges at Iris, but Colt is there to intercept the attack. The soldier taunts Iris, asking if she's already out of magic. God shouts that he will give the signal for the mages to attack. The soldier mocks Iris's pretty face, saying he'll gladly mess it up. He orders her to drop her weapon as he closes in for the kill. Colt intercepts the soldier, his face a mask of manic, desperate determination. He swings his heavy pot, the iron clanging loudly against the soldier's helmet. Enraged, the soldier curses at the brat who dared to interfere with him. Colt knows his pot is ineffective, He must target the armor's weak points. He knows he has to fight, steeling himself for an animated, desperate battle. He hurls his ladle at the soldier's head, a feint to create an opening. He uses the distraction to get inside the soldier's reach, his winning range. He ducks under a wild swing, getting even closer to his heavily armored opponent. He shoves the soldier with his shield, screaming that he needs one more step. He grips his improvised weapon, ready to end the grueling shoving match. The soldier pushes back with immense force, their weapons grinding together. The soldier's blade finds its mark, slashing deep into Colt's exposed side. In the heat of battle, Colt grits his teeth, his face a mask of exertion. He raises his pot to strike, facing a heavily armored knight on the cobblestones. The knight's skill is terrifying. He aims precisely for Colt's vital points. His opponent taunts him for cheekily blocking the blade of a superior warrior. Colt knows the difference in their abilities is clear. He must be careful. The knight goads him, daring the boy to come forward and attack him. Fortunately, the knight has underestimated him, thinking him just a hot-headed kid. Colt decides to use his opponent's arrogance and carelessness to his own advantage. He will play the fool, make the knight let his guard down, and find an opening. The knight's eyes narrow, sensing a shift in the tense standoff. Enraged, the knight bellows for Colt to come at him as he was told. Colt charges forward with a grunt, swinging his heavy iron pot. The pot connects with the knight's helmet in a deafening clang of metal. The knight's blade slides off the pot in a vicious, wrap-around counterstrike. With a sharp crack, Colt manages to block the deadly follow-up with his shield. The force of the blow sends him stumbling backward across the stone street. But with a manic grin, Colt declares that an attack like that is useless. He braces himself against the powerful onslaught, determined to endure the knight's fury. The knight grunts in surprise, shocked by the boy's unexpected resilience. He accuses Colt of playing the fool, simply enduring his attacks without purpose. But Colt's wild eyes are searching, trying to find a weakness in the assault. The knight taunts him again, asking if he really thought that would work. The knight's sword descends in a powerful, cleaving arc. Colt watches the attack, searching for a connection, an opening in the pattern. He knows there must be a flaw somewhere in the knight's relentless assault. With a surge of resolve, he knows he will find it, no matter what. He lunges forward, getting inside the knight's guard to disrupt his attack. But his eyes widen in sudden, horrified realization as he miscalculates. A spray of blood erupts as the knight's blade bites deep into his side. He is thrown backward, crashing hard onto the unforgiving cobblestones. From a nearby rooftop, Iris screams his name in a cry of pure terror. The knight stands over him, annoyed that the noisy brat was so much trouble. He raises his sword for the final blow, telling Colt to just die already. With a sudden gasp, Colt's eyes snap open, refusing to surrender. He pushes himself to his knees, his body screaming in protest. The knight and Iris both stare in utter shock at his defiance. Clutching the gushing wound, Colt screams that it hurts so damn much. He realizes that without the fur pelt Gotts gave him, he'd be dead. He stands defiantly, his face a mask of pain and unwavering resolve. Enraged, the knight attacks wildly, screaming for the boy to finally die. He pants with exertion, demanding to know why Colt refuses to be killed. Colt plants his shield, roaring that he will absolutely not back down. He challenges the knight, daring him to try and make him lower his shield. The knight accepts the challenge, screaming that he will do it. Their weapons clash as Colt slams his shield into the knight's sword. The blade becomes wedged in the shield, and the knight cannot pull it free. Colt glares at him, his eyes burning with intensity. He stomps forward, reminding the knight that he had dared him to attack. His heavy boot crashes down, closing the final distance between them. The knight can only stare in shock, trapped and weaponless. "I'm here now," Colt snarls, his face inches from the knight's helmet. He declares with a wild look that this is the pot's winning range. He explains his strategy, a wrap strike, a feint using the pot's weight. With a final cry of determination, he yells that this will end it. But the knight anticipates the move, raising his own shield to block. Colt realizes with a jolt of panic that his opponent has seen through his plan. His final, desperate attack is about to be blocked. It won't hit. Suddenly, Iris leaps from above, calling Colt's name as she descends. Her sudden appearance from behind the knight is the perfect distraction. The knight turns, surprised, as Iris pleads for Colt to kill him. Colt's face breaks into a triumphant, bloody grin. Iris is truly an angel. With a final, desperate war cry, he puts all his strength into one last blow. He swings his pot and ladle in a powerful, spinning attack. The pot crashes into the knight's helmet with a sickening, resonant crunch. The force of the impact sends the knight staggering backward, his senses shattered. Colt follows through, placing a hand on the fallen knight's helmet. The defeated warrior weakly pleads for him to stop, to spare his life. Colt says he'll forgive being called a peasant because it's true, but with a final roar of die, he brings his heavy shield down. The shield crushes the knight's skull as the pot begins to glow with runes. Colt stares at the pot in his hand, wondering what the light is. His eyes widen in dawning horror, asking if it glows after he kills someone. He kneels over the corpse, exhausted, as Iris calls out his name. She rushes to his side, her face pale with worry, asking if he's hurt. The adrenaline fades, and he collapses, mumbling that he just remembered the pain. Iris catches him, telling him not to worry about getting her dirty. Her eyes fill with tears as she pleads with him not to die. She sobs that it's her fault for not being able to kill the knight herself. Lying on the ground, Colt looks up at her, his voice a faint whisper. Gotz and Martina arrive, the guild master demanding to know if Colt is all right. Colt smiles weakly, greeting his commander and the battle pastor. Gotz turns, annoyed, to see another soldier already looting the knight's corpse. He then addresses the rescued villagers, who thank him for his help. Colt tells Gotz that he won by using the very techniques he was taught. The guild master stares, a look of genuine pride and surprise on his face. Later, bandaged, Colt tells Iris he is suddenly feeling very sleepy. Martina approaches, announcing that it is time to properly treat his wound. She kneels to examine the gash as Gotz asks for her assessment. Her expression is calm and focused as she diagnoses the injury. She reports that the wound is shallow and he will be fine by tomorrow. She instructs Gotz to simply apply pressure to stop the bleeding for now. Colt smiles at a worried Iris, thanking her for her concern. Iris blushes, saying she should be the one thanking him for his help. A lone guard keeps watch over the war-torn village. Martina walks away, satisfied that their cause was a righteous one. The Margrave addresses his troops, thanking them for their bravery and fighting spirit. He announces that scouts have spotted the enemy's main army approaching. He orders an immediate withdrawal, telling his men to pack and leave at once. Colt looks up in surprise, asking if they are really leaving already. Iris explains that with their small numbers, they would be no match for a full army. Iris warns that if another group joins the fray, the damage will be immense. Colt asks with alarm if she is referring to the enemy's main force. She corrects him, explaining that these creatures are drawn by the scent of blood. Noticing she has stopped, Colt turns and asks her what is wrong. Iris feels they are being watched, and that the observers are already close. She confirms his unspoken fear, her gaze fixed on the path ahead. 3 grotesque goblins crawl from the woods, their wicked eyes gleaming. In Browerberg, a veteran adventurer gestures toward a building of beautiful women. The women of the bathhouse wave invitingly from the lively doorway. Colt blushes with temptation while an annoyed Iris glares at him. They arrive back at the fortified stone headquarters of the Adventurers Guild. The guild courtyard is filled with adventurers and militia assembled and waiting. Guild Master Gotz begins his address, acknowledging their long, hard march. He explains their recent campaign has been grueling organized warfare, causing fatigue. He looks over the weary adventurers, acknowledging their pitiful, exhausted state. With a grimace, he says he must unfortunately talk about the war again. A map reveals the enemy forces are retreating south to recover their strength. Gotts says the Emperor will pursue, giving the guild a different role. The assembled adventurers listen with grim expressions, waiting for their orders. He grins, announcing their new mission is to stay and defend Browerberg. He tells the weary soldiers to rejoice, as they will get one day off. The men are stunned, then realize they are getting a long-awaited day of rest. The entire courtyard erupts in a massive, joyous cheer for their break. A sharp, commanding voice suddenly cuts through the celebration, demanding silence. Doris, the guild administrator, appears, looking at Gotts with stern disapproval. She reminds him to act with decorum, as there are prying eyes about. Gotts apologizes to Doris, admitting he got a little carried away. She lectures that he must set a proper example of discipline for the town. Iris explains to Colt that she is Doris, the guild's no-nonsense administrator. Gotts grins, announcing their next mission, which the smart ones already know. With dawning horror, Colt and Iris realize it's a goblin extermination mission. The goblin horde, he explains, is drawn to the scent of battle at the Blue Mountain. Doris announces the distribution of money and spoils, telling them to line up. Colt, now in a gambeson, knows solid defense is his only path to survival. Iris shows Colt a pile of gold, exclaiming she's never seen it before. She tells him to be happier, reminding him of all the hardships they faced. Colt holds his share, a fortune worth over $760,000 in his old currency. He wonders if he can finally afford to have some fun in this world. An adventurer named Fuchs approaches, remarking on Colt's newfound wealth. The men invite Colt to the bathhouse now that he can afford it. They tempt him with rumors of a beautiful new back-scrubbing attendant. Colt tries to decline, but Iris grabs him, saying they will pass for today. Iris teases him, slyly asking if he really wanted to go with them. They find themselves at the refugee camp just outside the city walls. A few of the militia members stand guard near the crude tents. Iris spots Albin, the village leader, and quickly greets him. Albin turns, surprised, and offers a polite hello to the two adventurers. He shakes Colt's hand, thanking him profusely for saving the village refugees. Albin formally praises Colt's splendid actions during the desperate battle. He bestows a blessing upon him, naming him the hero of the pot. Colt, blushing deeply, can only stammer his thanks for the grand title. A young woman sees them from afar, recognizing Colt as the pot person. She tackles him in an exuberant hug, shouting that it's the real hero. Albin introduces the girl as Louise, the daughter of a local hunter. She explains she lost her parents and fled here with the other refugees. She introduces herself as Lulu and asks Colt to treat her as an equal. Learning he is 16, she is thrilled that he is only a year older. Louise then gives the completely shocked Colt a quick kiss on his cheek. He stammers, flustered, recognizing the gesture as a formal greeting kiss. Iris watches the exchange with a quiet, unreadable expression on her face. Louise blushes, explaining she is truly grateful to the hero for saving her. If he hadn't saved her village, she would have just been married off. Colt understands her grim fate, realizing her future had been stripped away. Albin addresses Colt again, his expression now serious and thoughtful. He reminds him that it is not just the fighters who risk their lives. He gestures to the camp, saying everyone here is fighting to see tomorrow. Albin and Louise wave goodbye as they head off to gather more supplies. Iris reappears, teasing Colt about his popularity and how angry he seems. Gotts and the knight wait for them, noting they arrived fully armed. Gotts, now helmeted, explains their next battle will be a mountain hunt. He tells Iris he will train her so she can at least protect herself. He grins, promising he won't go easy on them for their day off. The knight draws a wooden practice sword with a sharp, definitive sound. He tells them to think of him as a goblin and attack with everything. He sets the rules for Iris: 5 small flame attacks instead of fireballs. Iris, though nervous, gives a firm yes in response to the instructions. Other adventurers watch from a distance as the mock battle is set to begin. Iris takes command, ordering Colt to engage the knight while she casts. Colt charges, his shield deflecting the knight's initial practice sword strike. He shouts his understanding and rushes to keep the armored warrior busy. He swings his pot, attempting a counterattack against the formidable knight. The knight casually bats Colt's pot aside with his own makeshift weapon. Iris suddenly yelps in pain as she trips over her own feet. She tumbles to the ground, her staff and a practice sword flying away. Colt, distracted, calls out her name in alarm, his focus broken. The knight mockingly tells Iris to watch where she is going. In an instant, the knight disarms Colt and sends him to the ground. His wooden practice sword is now pressed firmly against Colt's throat. The knight declares his victory, calling the fight a foregone conclusion. Iris jumps to her feet, protesting loudly that it was completely unfair. From behind his helmet, the knight lets out a short, dismissive scoff. Gotts, his helmet now off, begins the debrief, explaining goblins are cunning. He says they will always target the one who looks easiest to kill. He explains that Iris, running carelessly in the open, was the weak point. Iris argues back, saying she couldn't get a clear shot without hitting Colt. Gotts retorts that she must therefore rely on Colt to make an opening. He instructs Colt to move laterally to create a line of fire for Iris. He emphasizes that if Colt fails to do so, Iris is completely useless. The knight taunts the struggling Colt, saying he cannot be held back. He tells Colt that he bears the responsibility for his party's survival. Iris shouts from the background, telling Colt they need to go one more time. The knight stands over the exhausted pair, stating they've died 10 times in this mock battle. Colt, panting for breath, complains that the knight's physical power is on another level. He asks in disbelief if all knights are this incredibly tough and strong. The knight explains that while humans have limits, some beings can surpass them. He speaks of rare mutations called the gifted who receive the grace of the dragon. The knight then turns to Colt, asking him why he hesitated during the fight. He suggests that the recent battles might have been too much for a newcomer. Quitting now, he tells Colt, is also a perfectly valid choice to make. Colt reflects on how well he thought he fought during the church battle. He has faced death so many times, he feels lost and confused in this world. The knight watches him, simply remarking that it's a strange situation. But Colt feels a strange confidence that if he just pushes through, he can manage. His eyes fill with determination as he vows to absolutely survive the goblin hunt. He gets to his feet, demanding the knight teach him everything about goblins. The knight asks if he's certain he has no intention of running away. Colt gives a firm, silent nod, his resolve hardening into a solid certainty. Impressed, the knight agrees to tell him what he needs to know. He begins by calling goblins the weakest and most pathetic of all monsters. A nearby adventurer looks up, startled by the dark lesson that is starting. The knight details their horrific reproductive cycle, using hosts to create their young. He clarifies that their victims can be any creature, even males of other species. The host's body is transformed into an incubator, and they die when the young emerge. This biological drive forces them to constantly seek new seedbeds and expand. A sudden, terrified scream pierces the air as Albin flees a goblin pack. Just behind him, the young hunter Louise is tackled to the ground by monsters. The knight is shocked, realizing the goblins have already reached their position. Colt roars a curse, telling Louise to run as he charges into the fray. He swings his pot with a mighty crash, caving in a goblin's skull. For a brief moment, he grins, confident that he can handle this fight. His confidence shatters as 2 more goblins leap at him from behind. He realizes with a jolt of panic that there are 2 of them. The knight moves like a phantom, cutting down the 2 goblins in a flash. Another adventurer is overwhelmed, falling to the vicious, swarming creatures. Colt grits his teeth in rage, watching the chaotic and brutal fight unfold. Louise, pinned to the ground, screams at the goblin to stop its assault. She begs it to let her go, crying she was saving herself for someone she likes. With a furious roar, Colt smashes another goblin away from the helpless girl. The knight yells a sharp warning, telling Colt to get back immediately. A massive, flaming monster is engulfed in a sudden magical inferno cast by Iris. Iris lands and rushes to Louise's side, asking if she is unharmed. Louise looks up, her face streaked with tears as she trembles in fear. The knight delivers a final, fatal blow to the last remaining goblin. Colt turns to his party leader, his expression serious as he calls out her name. He tells her he now understands his current fighting style is far too weak. His eyes burning with intensity, he tells her that he has a favor to ask. He pleads with her to teach him how to use magic for the upcoming fight. Back at the guild, Iris reflects on Colt's desperate plea to learn magic. If he could use magic, she reasons, their party's tactical options would greatly expand. She enthusiastically agrees, saying she'll gladly teach him if it will strengthen them. Colt blushes with excitement, telling her he's counting on her to teach him. Iris, holding a large book, declares that they should begin his training immediately. She presents him with a massive, leather-bound tome, identifying it as a grimoire. Colt is completely intimidated by the sheer thickness of the ancient magic book. Iris explains that magic can be used by simply chanting the incantations aloud. However, to truly master magic, one must read and understand the grimoire's theories. She laments that the valuable book costs more than 2 gold coins to purchase. Colt, looking serious, interrupts to ask Iris a very important question. He asks if magic works without reading, then remembers his amnesia, which she forgot. Iris sighs, resigning herself to teaching him how to read and write first. Colt surprises her, saying he thinks he already knows the alphabet quite well. Iris is ecstatic, exclaiming that he got every letter correct and is very smart. She praises him, calling him amazing, while he looks on slightly embarrassed. He gratefully credits his compulsory education, as this world's alphabet is similar to his. They head to a field outside the city walls to begin his practical training. Iris says the next step is to confirm his mana capacity and practical skills. She holds out her hand, telling him to take it and feel for the magic. Colt reaches for her hand, a look of focused curiosity on his face. With a gasp, he feels a sudden surge of magical energy flow through him. As their hands touch, a warm, tingling energy flows between the two of them. Iris notes it's the same warm power she felt from the enchanted soup. Colt closes his eyes in concentration, confirming that he has found the feeling. He focuses his will, imagining the energy gathering in the palm of his hand. His hand trembles with effort as he concentrates, trying to give the energy form. A small, crackling orb of dark energy materializes just above his open palm. Iris explains that this is a manosphere, a weak projectile attack. By adding various conditions with incantations, she says different effects can be created. She demonstrates, adding the condition of combustion, causing her sphere to ignite. She tells him to try chanting burn to see if his sphere will ignite. Iris then tells him to try making more spheres to test his capacity. He throws his first sphere, which explodes against a nearby tree with little effect. He realizes that a single mana sphere is equivalent to 1 attack spell. He tries to summon another, but looks at his empty hand in confusion. Iris asks him what is wrong as he stares at his palm, completely puzzled. He realizes with a nervous laugh that the magic seems to be all gone. Iris explains the hard truth. His mana capacity is fixed at 1 single spell. She tells him not to worry, as the vast majority of people have no magic. Colt agrees that while it's a small amount, it's a very valuable discovery. He believes that depending on how he uses it, it could become a powerful weapon. That evening, Colt orders a hearty, meat-filled meal at a bustling local tavern. He is surprised to see Doris, the guild administrator, who greets him warmly. Doris, now wearing glasses and a friendly smile, invites him to join her table. He accepts her offer with an enthusiastic "of course" and a wide grin. Doris hands him a mug of beer, and they toast to their meeting. She takes a large gulp and exclaims that the beer is absolutely delicious. She notices Colt staring at her and asks him what is on his mind. He admits he's surprised to see her enjoying beer, given her stern daytime image. She laughs, explaining that her work life and private life are separate things. She leans in with a playful wink, saying that for dwarves, beer is like water. Colt blushes and takes a nervous sip, saying he finally understands now. Doris, the half-elf guild administrator, smiles warmly while holding a large wooden mug. She notes that it's a miracle Colt survived with no memory. He replies it was just luck. She explains that in their line of work, even veterans can die in an instant. With a sorrowful look, Doris recalls having seen off many adventurers who never returned. Colt's expression is one of stunned realization as he learns the harsh truth. Doris reveals the grim nickname for adventurers, the half-dead for their precarious lives. A shocked Colt can only stammer in acknowledgement, the reality sinking in. She elaborates that when quests run dry, many are forced to become bandits to survive. This grim truth, she adds thoughtfully, also applies to the life of a mercenary. Colt understands that protectors were still needed, and the Lord devised a solution. Doris explains the Margrave hired adventurers, forming a semi-permanent military force. And so, she concludes, the Adventurers Guild was established about 40 years ago. She casually mentions that, like elves, her dwarven blood grants her a long life. She proudly states she's been with the guild since the third Margrave's time. Doris tells Colt she expects him to be an old man when she sees him off. Inspired by her faith in him, Colt beams and replies with a determined yes. A column of armored knights on horseback departs from the city of Browerberg. The soldiers and mercenaries look on, their service to the city now at an end. A knight shakes hands with a local soldier, saying they are returning to the emperor. The young smith's children wave goodbye, cheerfully calling out to the pot brother. Colt and Iris watch the army leave, both hoping the war is truly over. Gotz gathers the remaining adventurers, announcing it is time for a goblin hunt. He grins, adding that a new member has officially joined their ranks. Louise introduces herself, excitedly announcing she is the guild's new cook's assistant. Gotz tells Iris to look after the new girl, and she reluctantly agrees. With a roar and a raised fist, Gotz orders the guild to depart for the Blue Mountain. The large, imposing form of the Blue Mountain, or Blauberg, looms before them. A wider view shows the mountain overlooking the city and the surrounding valley. Colt, Iris, and Louise make their way into the dense forest at the mountain's base. Colt holds up a leaf, marveling at its unique emerald, or lapis lazuli, color. At a base camp, Gotz stands before the assembled adventurers to give his briefing. He holds up two gauntlet fingers, explaining there are two important objectives. The first objective is to reduce the goblin numbers and halt their incursions. The second, more critical objective is to secure the mountain's vital water source. Gotz explains they will sweep the area, focusing their search along the riverbanks. The various adventurer parties split up, heading upstream to hunt for goblin nests. Gotz instructs them to use a blue smoke stone if they encounter any goblins. He continues the briefing, telling them a yellow stone signifies a discovered nest. Finally, he explains that a red stone is to be used only in an emergency. Colt's party follows a narrow, winding animal trail through the dense forest. Colt leads the way, his senses on high alert as they move cautiously. Iris calls out to him, noticing that he has suddenly stopped in his tracks. He stares ahead at a well-worn path that cuts through the thick undergrowth. He realizes with a gasp that it is a beast trail, a path used by animals. Iris explains that goblins sometimes use such trails to ambush deer and other prey. Colt realizes with dawning fear that following the convenient path is a logical trap. Despite the obvious danger, Iris tells him they must press forward. He follows her down the path, his body tense with anticipation. Colt complains that his heavy gambeson is making him sweat under his armor. Iris remarks that it must be nice for magic users to wear lighter gear. Her expression suddenly sharpens as her keen senses detect something nearby. Reacting instantly to her silent alarm, Colt draws his weapon. He spots the threat first, a pack of goblins emerging from the trees to their left. He immediately raises his shield and pot, bracing for the inevitable attack. A grotesque, long-nosed goblin lunges forward, its white eyes glowing with malice. The creature lets out a piercing, guttural shriek as it closes the distance. Colt prepares his counterattack, his enchanted pot glowing with a faint energy. He smashes the pot into the goblin's face with a sickening, explosive crunch. A close-up shows his eye, wide and focused with the intensity of combat. He catches movement from his flank as another goblin tries to get behind him. The second goblin snarls, its sharp teeth bared as it prepares to strike. Colt brutally brings his pot down again, finishing off the flanking creature. He tells Iris to take the right flank while he handles the left. With a determined grin, Colt shouts his understanding and ready agreement. Iris, her face set with concentration, yells "Burn!" as she casts her fire spell. They fight back to back, a perfectly coordinated assault of fire and iron. After the brief battle, Colt praises Iris, saying their teamwork was perfect. Iris agrees they would have died alone, but Colt credits Gotz's training. Standing over the corpses, they decide to light the blue smoke stone for an encounter. A hand holds the stone aloft, releasing a plume of blue smoke into the sky. From the command post, Gotz sees the smoke and identifies it as Colt's position. He places another blue marker on the map, noting it is the 20th signal. Gotz looks toward the mountain, his expression grim, remarking that it is strange. Doris agrees that it is odd to have so many encounters without finding a nest. Gotz deduces that they must be dealing with a single, massive, unified nest. He notes that nocturnal goblins hunting in daylight is a very bad sign indeed. Doris suddenly looks up at the mountain with a jolt of dawning realization. She exclaims that if a rumor is true, she might have just found the nest. Gotz turns to her, asking what is wrong, sensing her sudden alarm. He asks if something is bothering her, but she initially denies it. Gotz insists, his tone firm, telling her to speak her mind freely. Doris reveals that there is a nest she personally sealed up in that area long ago. Gotz asks if there is any chance that her seal was insufficient. Doris says not to underestimate a dwarf, boasting it would take months to break. Gotz considers the limited information, contemplating his next command. He turns and calls over a young messenger boy waiting nearby. He orders the messenger to go to the location he marked and check its status. Gotz then gives a second, more urgent order for the messenger to relay. He tells the boy to deliver the message to any guild members he encounters. The order is clear. The situation is strange, and they must not enter any nests. Gotz's face is a mask of grim authority as he emphasizes that they must stop. Colt and Iris receive the message, their faces reflecting the gravity of the command. They arrive at a dark fissure in the rock, identifying it as the goblin nest. As they approach, a hooded figure greets them from the cave's entrance. It is the battle pastor Martina and her veteran party, Salvation of the Dead. Colt and Iris recognize the famous adventurer party with excited expressions. Colt recalls their reputation as a gathering of beautiful people who deliver salvation. Martina explains that they also followed the beast trail, which led them here. One of her party members jokes that Colt and Iris managed to beat them to it. Martina observes that the nest she sealed long ago seems to have been dug out. A veteran adventurer gives orders, telling his party they will hunt inside the cave. Colt eagerly agrees to the command, his eyes wide with determination. The battle pastor Martina asks them to please prevent any attacks from the rear. The veteran party enters the darkness, telling the others to be careful. The forest floor outside the cave is quiet and dappled with sunlight. A view of the surrounding woods shows a seemingly peaceful scene. Colt and Iris keep watch, waiting patiently for the party to return. Iris notes that it has been nearly 20 minutes since Salvation of the Dead went in. A sudden rustle in the nearby bushes startles Iris, causing her to turn. Both Colt and Iris react in alarm, preparing for a goblin attack. A young man stumbles from the woods, insisting he is not a goblin. Colt realizes he must be a messenger from the guildmaster. The messenger leads them back to the cave, noting it was once sealed. He apologizes, saying he might be late with a message from the guildmaster. He relays the order. The situation is strange, so do not rush the nest. Just then, a deep, ominous rumbling echoes from the mouth of the cave. Martina emerges from the darkness, calling out to Colt and Iris. They stare in shock, calling out Martina's name in surprise. Martina rallies her party, ordering them to counterattack at the cave entrance. Colt acknowledges the command, his pot and shield held at the ready. The messenger turns to flee, vowing to inform the guildmaster. The other members of Martina's party look shaken, wondering what just happened. A warrior reports the goblin numbers are abnormal, perhaps over 120. Another adventurer shouts that there are 5 hulking hobgoblins among them. A massive horde of goblins and their larger kin pour from the darkness. Martina tells her comrades to focus on the enemy now and complain later. Iris tells Colt that she will take care of the large hobgoblin. Her face alight with power, she screams for her magic to ignite. A massive fireball engulfs the lead hobgoblin in a fiery explosion. Iris and Colt watch, expecting the powerful spell to be decisive. The hobgoblin, though scorched, lets out a guttural roar of pure rage. Wreathed in flames, it charges forward, its massive club raised high. Iris and Colt stare in disbelief, realizing the attack was not enough. Colt shoves Iris to safety, yelling an apology as she stumbles away. He dodges the hobgoblin's club as it shatters the ground where he stood. He realizes the monster's weapon has a foolishly long reach. He charges forward, refusing to be drawn into a fight on its terms. He gets inside its guard, declaring this is his range for a contest. He swings his heavy iron pot with all his might, gritting his teeth. The pot clangs harmlessly, and the monster asks if that was supposed to work. The hobgoblin's face contorts into a vicious, angry snarl. With a casual backhand, it swats Colt across the ground. He tumbles, realizing with a gasp that his attack was completely ineffective. He is shocked to find the creature's hide is as hard as iron. The hobgoblin looms over the fallen Colt, raising its club for the kill. Suddenly, an arrow slams into the hobgoblin's eye at point-blank range. The creature screams in agony as blood erupts from the devastating wound. An elven archer thanks Colt for providing the opening with his covering fire. Colt's eyes gleam with resolve. This is his chance to attack now. He knows his pot won't break its bones, so he must find another way. He stares intently at the arrow still lodged in the hobgoblin's eye. The monster claws at its face, the arrow stuck fast in its left eye. Colt realizes with a flash of inspiration that he can use the wound. He leaps onto the creature's back, grabbing the arrow's shaft firmly. He screams that this is the end, preparing to drive the arrow deeper. With a final, desperate roar, he puts his entire body weight into the push. The arrow is driven completely through the hobgoblin's skull with a sickening crunch. The hobgoblin falls, but another goblin archer immediately takes aim at Colt. Colt dodges the arrow and taunts the goblin for what it's doing to him. Another hobgoblin emerges from the horde, its face a mask of vicious intent. Colt engages it, but his pot attack is deflected with a curse. He is pushed back, overwhelmed by the creature's immense strength. He stumbles, realizing he is in deep trouble against this new foe. He recalls Gotza's training. Find a weakness and attack it relentlessly. Gotza's voice echoes in his mind, telling him to attack until it's dead. Colt screams that there might be monsters in this world he can't defeat. He is brutally overpowered by another hobgoblin, his pot useless. He looks down at his pot, its surface dull and mundane. He realizes in horror that the pot isn't glowing. It wasn't a finishing blow. Martina calls out that she will provide support for Colt's finishing blow. Colt leaps back, acknowledging her command with a shout. She intones a prayer, asking to grant mercy to this blood-stained existence. With a powerful cry, she unleashes her holy attack, salvation of the dead. The hobgoblin is vaporized in a flash of divine, destructive light. Colt marvels at the beautiful and powerful strike, impressed by her strength. Gotts and his reinforcements arrive, noting the cave entrance is too narrow. He orders the veteran Salvation of the Dead to hold the front line. He directs other veteran parties to cover the flanks of the main force. He designates the mages as the rear guard, calling them the Ice Shield. He tells the rookies, like Colt, to stay back and learn from the veterans. Gotts cheerfully asks Iris if his special anti-goblin training was of any use. Iris, flustered, admits that goblins truly are a handful. She confesses with a blush that her magic didn't work on the hobgoblin. Gotts reminds her that he taught her to aim for the weak points. Iris blushes deeply, asking if he meant she should aim for the groin. Gotts laughs, telling her to observe her victims more closely. Mortified, Iris covers her face and vows to try her best. A scout reports back that there are hobgoblins deep within the cave. He continues that there are also countless regular goblins, too many to count. He spots a massive creature in the back, larger than any hobgoblin. Gotts identifies it as the boss, possibly a mutated hoblord. His face a mask of cold resolve. Gotts gives the order to crush them. He rallies his troops, asking if they are ready for the coming battle. As the guild charges, he orders the mages to create an ice shield. The ice corridor will be used to sweep away the surrounding goblins. A robed mage repeats the command to sweep away the surrounding goblins. A wave of ice erupts from the ground, freezing several goblins solid. The ice forms a long corridor, funneling the adventurers towards the horde. With a unified war cry, the guild charges down the icy path into battle. Iris tells Colt they will take the left flank, and he readily agrees. Two grotesque goblins, their bodies taut with malice, leap over a jagged barrier of ice. They scramble over the sharp crystals, one hissing that their path cannot be blocked. Don't look away. Iris warns Colt with urgency. They're coming. A horde of goblins swarms from the cavern's depths, their high-pitched shrieks echoing. Colt wordlessly plants his shield, bracing himself to meet the monstrous tide head-on. With a furious roar, he shoves forward, telling the creatures to get out of his way. Buy me a moment, Iris commands from behind his shield. Got it, he replies. A manic, determined grin spreads across Colt's face as he commits to the desperate fight. He brings his heavy iron pot down with a sickening crack, smashing a goblin's skull. Iris's eyes narrow, her focus absolute as she bids her magic to answer her call. With a cry, she summons the Blade of Flame, a shimmering sword of pure fire. The magical blade passes through a goblin, which lets out a final, agonized shriek. How many are there? Iris cries, vowing to strike at the endless horde once more. She unleashes a powerful flammable spell, a torrent of fire, into the goblin ranks. The goblins burn and shriek, but more clamber over the flames, their advance unending. Iris explains that the powerful Blade of Flame spell has consumed 2 of her mana charges. Once her final fireball is used, she grimly states they will have no choice but to pray. Yeah, Colt agrees, a bead of sweat on his face, his smile tight with resolve. A goblin leaps at Iris, but she repels it with a quick burst of fiery magic. Colt slams his shield into another goblin, sending its head flying in a spray of gore. Iris, hang on, he shouts over the din. I've got the front line covered. A close-up on a single, wide eye reveals a moment of dawning, absolute horror. A massive hobgoblin has seized Iris from behind, its powerful arms pinning her. Colt's face contorts in shock and terror as he witnesses his partner's capture. He is immediately swarmed by more goblins, one brandishing a crude but deadly dagger. He grits his teeth, snarling in frustration as the horde threatens to overwhelm him. Smashing another goblin, he screams in fury, "Why aren't their numbers going down?" A veteran adventurer looks on in shock, asking what is possibly happening here. The source is revealed, a bloated, monstrous figure seated upon a grotesque throne. From its body, fully formed goblins are birthed, squirming in a foul, bubbling pool. The goblin mother sits on her throne of skulls, surrounded by her newborn spawn. That bastard, Gotts realizes with disgust, is giving birth to infants. He identifies the creature as a goblin mother, empowered by the grace of the dragon. Martina understands that the immense power she sensed was the creature's reproductive ability. She realizes this power is also responsible for the rapid growth of its children. Yeah, Gotts confirms grimly. This is the source of all of it. The sudden swarm and the massive numbers all stem from this one horrifying source. Its power is drawn from a massive, blindfolded troll, kept alive as a living factory. "Commander!" an adventurer yells. It's starting to move. The silent knight watches with cold interest, curious to see the giant's power. Gotts rallies his men, ordering them not to give the enemy a moment of freedom. "Attack in waves," he roars. "Hit them all at once." The adventurers charge into the fray, but the ground is already littered with their dead. The hobgoblin tightens its grip on Iris, who screams in terror and agony. It begins to crush her, and she pleads for it to stop its brutal assault. "It hurts," she cries out, her face a mask of pure, unadulterated pain. "I won't," Colt thinks, seeing her plight and fighting with renewed desperation. "I won't let you," he roars, refusing to allow them to harm her. He fights with a reckless abandon, trying to carve a path toward his captured friend. "Iris, I'm coming," he yells, using a goblin's corpse as a springboard to leap forward. Another goblin latches onto his back, its claws digging in, trying to drag him down. Colt's face is a mask of crazed determination, ignoring the creature clinging to him. His path is blocked as another adventurer is violently slammed to the ground before him. He is thrown back, grunting in pain, his desperate rescue attempt thwarted. As he stumbles, a goblin with a crude knife lunges at him from the side. Annoying, he snarls, his face bloody but his will to fight unbroken. Screaming that this is a pain, he swings his pot and smashes the goblin away. He lands on his shield, sliding across the blood-soaked ground amidst the chaos. His knuckles are white as he grips his ladle, his body straining with exhaustion. Standing over a fallen goblin, he pants for breath, surrounded by the fires of battle. A hobgoblin's swing is blocked, sending a spray of blood flying past his head. His eyes are wide with fatigue and adrenaline, sweat pouring down his face. He looks up to see the hobgoblin still holding Iris, who has gone limp in its grasp. "Iris," he whispers, his voice filled with a dawning despair. He charges through the carnage, his shield held high, a lone figure of defiance. He knows his pot's range is too short. He is still too far away to help. The hobgoblin raises its arm, preparing to deliver the final, fatal blow to Iris. No, Colt thinks frantically. At this distance, only magic will reach. He remembers Iris's lesson. His manosphere has the power of a single punch. He summons his one sphere of magic, acknowledging that it is all he has left. With a desperate, primal scream, he declares that this is his only remaining option. He hurls the sphere with all his might, pleading for it to hit its mark. The sphere strikes the hobgoblin's back and fizzles out with a pathetic sizzle. The magic dissipates into nothing, having done no damage whatsoever. Colt's face is a mask of utter shock and disbelief at his complete failure. The hobgoblin turns its head, its single eye glaring with malevolent intent. It raises its crude dagger high, preparing to end Iris's life. "Why?" Colt sobs, tears streaming down his face. What a cruel, unreasonable world. He feels his desperate efforts have amounted to nothing at all. "Somebody, anybody," he wails, his voice cracking with anguish. "Help me." A calm voice cuts through his despair, simply stating, "Very well." The world shifts, and Colt finds himself standing alone in a silent, empty classroom. He looks up at a monitor hanging from the ceiling, which displays the frozen battle. The screen shows the hobgoblin poised to strike Iris, the moment paused in time. A pause icon is displayed in the corner of the screen, confirming the simulation. The goddess Nibirius appears, calmly assessing the situation. 33 goblins and one boss. She muses that the soul is low-grade and newly born, providing insufficient information. Well, she says with a cunning smile, an offering is an offering. She finds it amusing that Iris will die, but offers to help for the price of his plea. She presents Alhazard's blade, a forbidden magic unknown and illegal in this world. Colt stares in stunned silence, his mind reeling from this impossible revelation. The goddess explains she has shared the image and will take 10 souls as her tithe. Her help ends here, she says, telling him to call again with another offering. Just one more thing, Colt manages to say, his voice filled with a desperate hope. He asks her if she is the one known as the god of nothingness. She coyly replies that she is sometimes called that, but one should not speak a god's name in vain. Wreathed in divine energy, she proclaims, "My true name is Nibirius." Colt's eyes widen in shock as the world begins to warp and dissolve around him. The classroom shatters as he is pulled back to reality, her powerful name echoing. The goddess turns away, her work done, as the simulation screen goes blank. The goddess Nibirius watches the unfolding chaos, a condescending smile gracing her lips. The world becomes a blur of motion as a desperate charge begins. Amidst the chaos of battle, a goblin falls to the forest floor. A vile goblin pins Iris down, but Colt is already airborne, charging in. He calculates the final 5 steps, his mind a razor's edge of focus. A memory flashes, Iris warning him never to reveal the pot's forbidden power. He imagines the grim punishment for such a crime, a swift, public execution. But he realizes losing Iris just to save himself would be a worse fate. That thought solidifies his resolve, his face twisting with grim determination. He hurtles forward, knowing his plan will work perfectly at this range. With manic eyes, he understands with a jolt that he is too close. He uses a hobgoblin's head as a springboard, launching himself into the air. The goblin clasps its hands, ready to deliver a final, killing blow to Iris. A slash of black, invisible energy erupts as Colt's pot connects with its target. He lands, panting, identifying the forbidden magic as Alhazard's blade, an invisible projectile. A crazed grin spreads across his face. He knows he's exposed, if anyone saw. Dazed on the ground amidst the carnage, Iris weakly calls out Colt's name. She looks around in confusion, wondering what the commanders are doing. The massive goblin mother thrashes in a field of ice spikes, enraged. A veteran adventurer efficiently dispatches another goblin, his kill count rising rapidly. The goblin mother lets out a piercing shriek of fury for her slaughtered children. The silent knight confronts her, asking if she is angry about her brats dying. The queen's face contorts into a mask of pure, unadulterated hatred. He callously tells her not to mind it, as people simply die in despair. The queen bellows in rage, her voice shaking the very cavern walls. One of the veteran adventurers bravely challenges the monstrous queen to attack. The knight rallies the guild, declaring that a knight is stronger than any mother. He orders the crossbow unit to advance as the goblin horde swarms forward. The mages, including Martina, are commanded to prepare their powerful spells. With a cold glare, the knight declares that it is time to work. The crossbowmen unleash a deadly volley, their bolts tearing through the goblin ranks. The mages unleash a powerful ice spell, striking the queen with a massive shard. The goblin mother smashes through the ice, her monstrous charge barely slowed. A nearby soldier screams in terror that the queen's advance has not stopped. An armored warrior from Martina's party orders the panicked soldier to fall back. The brave warrior stands his ground, preparing to face the charging monster alone. The queen's massive hand closes around him, his armor groaning under the pressure. The knight calls for the salvation of the dead to provide covering fire. The warrior is pulled helplessly towards the queen's gaping, tooth-filled maw. A female adventurer gasps in horror at the gruesome sight before her. The queen tries to swallow him, but his plate armor becomes lodged in her throat. She begins to choke, her massive body convulsing as she gasps for air. Guts approaches her, mockingly asking if she is getting choked up. The queen gags violently, her eyes wide with panic and pain. She claws desperately at her own throat, trying to dislodge the obstruction. She coughs and sputters, her powerful body weakened by her own gluttony. Guts asks if her choking is some kind of prayer before he acts. He watches her struggle for a moment longer, his eyes cold and calculating. A demonic grin spreads across his face as he decides her fate is sealed. He shoves his gauntlet hand deep into her throat, telling her she is filthy. From within her maw, he growls that her foul breath stinks. A brilliant, divine light begins to emanate from his fist deep inside her. He tells her to stop breathing as her head begins to detonate. The goblin mother's head explodes in a massive, fiery blast of gore. Guts stands victorious as Martina apologizes for her own spell's failure. Martina looks up at the guildmaster with a small, deeply impressed smile. The adventurers raise their swords, cheering that the goblin mother has been slain. Colt and Iris stand together in the aftermath as he exclaims that they won. Iris looks at him, her eyes shining, confirming that they survived without a doubt. Blushing under her gaze, Colt can only agree with a happy smile. Amidst the carnage, Iris turns to Colt and thanks him for his help. She looks thoughtful, contemplating the strange power he just displayed. A severed goblin head lies on the ground, a testament to their victory. Colt tells Iris that he has finally figured out how to use his pot. Intrigued, she agrees it feels like forbidden magic, demanding he teach her later. Colt is left momentarily speechless, looking away with a slight blush. Iris smiles warmly, thanking him again for saving her life once more. Completely smitten, Colt thinks to himself that Iris is truly beautiful. He feels he could stare at her radiant, smiling face forever. His intense staring makes her flustered, and she yells, asking if it's real forbidden magic. He smiles sheepishly, confirming that her assessment is indeed correct. His mind flashes back to the moment the forbidden spell's image entered his head. He explains his theory that the pot used its own soul to power the attack. Iris reasons that since it saved their lives, it's acceptable for now. Colt agrees, promising to be more careful so he doesn't get caught. She smiles, agreeing that he would certainly be in deep trouble if discovered. The victorious but weary adventurers begin their march out of the dark cave. As they walk, Iris tells Colt she realized something important during the fight. She believes that he has probably come to the same conclusion as her. She states plainly that their party lacks sufficient frontline power. Colt gives a short, silent nod, confirming that he agrees with her assessment. She explains his new power is costly, and her magic needs a vanguard. As they walk, a new figure approaches them from behind on the path. Louise appears, cheerfully suggesting that she should join their adventuring party. Colt is surprised, recognizing her as Louise, the girl from Heidi Village. He remembers that she is the daughter of the hunter they met before. Louise is thrilled that the hero remembered her story and her name. She declares with fiery passion that she wants to slaughter all the goblins. She admits she didn't know how, but now believes she can do it. Colt is taken aback by her sudden and intense declaration of purpose. Iris, as leader, asks what kind of weapon Louise is able to wield. Louise says she can use a spear, but currently does not own one. Colt and Iris exchange a look, seeing a perfect solution to their problem. Colt agrees, saying they are happy just to have her join their ranks. Louise throws her arms up in a cheer, excited to be their new teammate. Back in Browerberg, the Grand Timber and Stone Adventurers Guild Hall stands tall. Gotts sits before them, officially approving Louise's admission into the guild. He looks at the three of them with a thoughtful, serious expression. His attention then turns from the new recruit to Colt and Iris. Looking them in the eyes, he announces that he is promoting them both. With a rare smile, Gotts announced he would promote them to official members. Colt and Iris were ecstatic, shouting they had no objections to the promotion. Gotts formally named their new party Iris, Colt, and Louise. Beaming with joy, Colt could only manage a fervent "yes, sir." Gotts told them the initiation ceremony was set for Monday. The day arrived, and they knelt before Gotts in the solemn guild hall. Iris and Colt bowed their heads, ready to take their oath. Gotts looked down at them, his expression serious and commanding. The veteran members of the guild watched the proceedings in grim silence. Gotts asked them to swear an oath to God, the Margrave, and the guild. With her back to the view, Iris formally swore her allegiance. Gotts knighted them, granting them the guild's authority in the name of Pot and Flame. He then stepped back, announcing the final, intimidating part of the ritual. The assembled adventurers looked on with hard, unwelcoming expressions. With a sharp rasp, a blade was drawn from its scabbard. Two lines of adventurers formed a long, intimidating arch of crossed swords. Colt looked up in absolute horror, his face pale with sweat. An older adventurer explained the grim tradition. Objectors could cut them down. He then ordered Colt to walk through the arch of blades. Colt stared down the tunnel of steel, his mouth agape with fear. He realized the old Colt must have been a truly hated man. A stern-faced adventurer glared, his animosity held in check. Two more veterans stared with cold, judgmental eyes. Gritting his teeth, Colt vowed not to be judged for his predecessor's sins. He took his first determined step forward into the gauntlet of steel. Having passed through unscathed, he looked back in surprise and relief. His face broke into a wide, joyous smile. Gotts grinned warmly, officially welcoming Colt to the Adventurers Guild. The tense mood shattered as Iris laughed and the veterans offered congratulations. The new members were now officially part of the guild. They immediately went to collect their pay from Doris at her desk. Doris explained their earnings. 3 silver for him and 1 for Louise. Louise was overjoyed, knowing 1 silver coin meant days of food. Colt turned to Iris, a new plan already forming in his mind. He suggested they use their new funds to buy Louise some proper equipment. Overwhelmed by their kindness, Louise was moved to tears of gratitude. Gotts approached, asking if they were heading to the blacksmith shop. He told them to go to Dieter's workshop, which surprised Colt. Gotts explained Dieter was the relative who had cared for him before his amnesia. He was a kind benefactor, but had sadly passed away recently. Gotts said Dieter's son took over and they should ask for help. Colt agreed, saying he would go and visit the workshop. They made their way through the winding streets of the town. They arrived at Dieter's workshop, a sturdy stone and timber building. Colt politely greeted a woman sitting outside the busy smithy. He introduced himself as Dieter's relative from the Adventurers Guild. The woman laughed, recalling her husband mentioning a no-good relative. Colt sweated, awkwardly admitting that must have been him. Inside, the young smith Vim complained about an upcoming deadline. His mother introduced him, saying he could help the adventurers. She cheerfully told her son to make time for their order. Vim told Colt not to mind his mother, explaining she was just worried. He asked what their order was, and Colt confirmed they needed armor. He showed them the new armor pieces, a gorget and spalders. Louise beamed with excitement, proudly holding up her new iron spear. Colt was relieved they could at least afford the shoulder armor. Vim explained how the armor's design deflected blades away from the neck. Colt understood and ordered both pieces, much to Vim's delight. Colt thought that Vim was a skilled, if easily persuaded, smith. As they left, Colt told Vim he had amnesia but was cared for by his father. Vim listened sympathetically, acknowledging Colt's difficult situation. Colt promised he would be back to buy more armor in the future. With a small smile, Vim agreed to help him again. As Colt turned to leave, Vim suddenly called out to him. The young smith's eyes were wide, fixed on the pot Colt carried. Colt was startled by Vim's sudden and intense stare. Vim quickly dismissed it, asking to see the pot another time. Walking away, Iris remarked that Dieter's son seemed sharp but quiet. Colt was worried, thinking Vim might have recognized the pot. He wondered if he had just met someone who knew the old cult. Iris looked at him with concern, telling him to be careful. Colt agreed, trying to sound more confident than he felt. That night, they returned to the familiar warmth of the guild hall. Doris approached them, holding a tankard of ale. She presented them with their official guild identification tags. They were overjoyed, realizing they were truly official members now. Doris smiled, then told them to promptly vacate their rooms. Colt's joyous expression immediately turned to one of sheer panic. Doris explained that guild lodging was only a perk for apprentices. With a sinking feeling, Colt realized he had forgotten this rule. She explained it was a relief measure for new, penniless recruits. Since they now had a stable salary, they had to find their own place. She told them to get out there and earn their keep. Colt wailed in despair, having just spent all their money. Iris told him to stop being pathetic and suggested they find a real estate agent. Colt worried about their budget, his face etched with concern. Iris looked down, a thoughtful expression on her face. She blushed, suggesting they rent a house and live together. They found a small, sturdy-looking stone house on the edge of town. Peering inside, their eyes widened with surprise and delight. The interior was spacious and clean, with a large stone fireplace. Iris noted that it came furnished for only 8 silver coins. With a loud bang, she threw open the upstairs shutters. She turned to Colt, declaring that the place was quite nice. She suggested they take it, and Colt eagerly agreed. He blushed, his mind racing with the thought of living alone with Iris. Flustered, Iris demanded to know what he was imagining. She threatened to burn him if he tried anything strange. Unseen beneath them, a hidden cellar door creaked open in the darkness. A skeletal, desiccated hand gripped the edge of the opening. An ancient evil awakens, hearing the distant sound of human voices. He feels the flames of passion rekindling within his withered, ancient body. The real estate agent confirms that their contract for the house is complete. Colt and Iris share a happy, blushing glance, excited for their new life. The agent recalls that he forgot to mention one very important detail. He informs a surprised Colt that the house is said to be haunted. He dismisses it as a foolish rumor he is obligated to share. He then presents the key to their new home, which Colt accepts. The agent's 2 imposing bodyguards stand by with their arms crossed. The party stands before their new home, watched by one of the thugs. Colt remarks that the real estate agency seems like an antisocial organization. Iris agrees, adding that they are nothing more than a thieves' guild. They resolve to put it behind them and prepare for their move. Colt pushes a rattling wooden handcart, moving their meager belongings. He arrives in the guild courtyard, having borrowed the cart from Doris. From a loft above, Iris thanks him and tells him to come up. He ascends the stairs, thinking he doesn't have much to carry anyway. He enters his old room, a messy space filled with scattered junk. He grumbles that the filthy room is filled with nothing but garbage. Amidst the clutter, he discovers a thick bundle of old notes. He realizes with a start that these are the old cult's belongings. Deciding to read them later, he carefully tucks them into his tunic. They stand before the sturdy stone and timber walls of their new home. Iris announces she is opening the door, and they step inside. Colt feels a thrill of excitement about moving into their new place. He suggests they decide on their rooms, noting that there are 3. Iris generously tells Colt that he can go ahead and choose first. He decides to take the room at the far end of the hallway. Iris cheerfully announces that she will take the room next door. He realizes with a start that his room has a clear view of her changing. She notices his stare and asks what's wrong, but he quickly denies it. Iris promptly hammers a cloth over her doorway to create a curtain. Colt covers his face in horror, wondering what just happened. She steps back, satisfied that the makeshift privacy curtain is finished. He forces a smile, thinking this new living situation is very difficult. He sets up a simple candle holder made from his trusty ladle. Looking around his sparse room, he decides that this will be enough. He tells Iris he's going out, but she quickly asks him to wait. He happily agrees, telling her he'll wait in his room. He muses to himself that Iris being afraid of ghosts is rather cute. While waiting, he decides now is a good time to read the notes. He carefully unties the string and begins to read the first page. He is shocked by the arcane diagrams and notes about enchantments. The notes detail a plan to invest his entire fortune into the pot. He reads in horror about the pot's ability to store human souls. He realizes with utter disgust that the previous cult was a true monster. Iris appears in the doorway, asking what he is muttering about. She takes a page and reads it, her expression turning to pure horror. She covers her face, disgusted and horrified by what she has read. She tells him she hopes he never regains his terrible old memories. He turns to her, deciding he must finally confess about his amnesia. Iris looks at him, surprised by his sudden and serious tone. He hesitates for a moment, struggling to find the right words. He blurts out that his story about amnesia is only a half-truth. She listens silently, her expression a mixture of confusion and concern. As she turns away, he grabs her arm, pleading for her to wait. He explains he truly doesn't remember anything before the Bowerbird battle. He shouts that, at that moment, he was reincarnated from another world. Reincarnated? She asks, completely stunned by his impossible claim. He tells her it's a long story, but he needs her to listen. He begins his tale, explaining that he once lived in a country called Japan. He recounts the truck accident and his fateful meeting with the goddess. Iris clutches her head, saying his unbelievable story is giving her a headache. He apologizes but insists it's the truth, hoping she'll believe him. She admits that while it's hard to believe, it explains some things. She recalls the old cult saying his weak body couldn't handle a wife. Cult stammers that he wasn't the one who said that, apologizing. She teases him, saying his habit of staring at her chest hasn't changed. With a warm, trusting smile, she crosses her arms and accepts his story. He looks at her, his eyes welling with tears of profound gratitude. The loud ringing of the midday bell echoes through the town. The bell reminds him they promised Louise they would do combat training. Iris agrees, saying they should go and that this conversation is over. With the air cleared between them, they happily run off to their next task. Iris points accusingly, saying she won't forgive his perverted staring. The party leaves the safety of the city walls far behind them. They walk through the open fields, heading out for their training mission. Louise excitedly asks what their opponent will be, guessing a dragon. They look at a quest posting for zombies with a 6 silver coin reward. Iris explains that zombies are comparatively easy enemies to deal with. Louise confirms that they only need to destroy the head to win. Iris adds that she's heard of rare cases that retain their personality. Colt notes that while the pay is low, it's still good practice. He announces their departure for the pot and flame zombie extermination. The three adventurers walk down a dusty path through the woods. Iris suddenly stops, sensing a presence rustling in the nearby bushes. Colt declares they will fight at range, and the party charges forward. Iris crouches and screams, "Burn!" unleashing her destructive fire magic. Her spell engulfs 2 shambling zombies in a torrent of flames. A third zombie lunges at Colt, its bony fingers outstretched. He shouts Iris's name, drawing the creature's attention to himself. Iris tells him to fall back, and he acknowledges her command. He plants his shield and shoves the zombie, pushing it off balance. He brings his heavy iron pot around in a powerful, arcing swing. The pot smashes into the side of the zombie's head with great force. The impact caves in its skull, ending its unnatural existence. Iris observes that the zombies were all unarmed, likely deserters. Colt agrees, noting deserters discard gear to escape faster. Louise understands, then spots another figure deeper in the woods. They spot a lone enemy, noting that this one is all by itself. A zombie in tattered armor lurches through a sunlit forest, its expression blank. The zombie rasps its name, identifying itself as the Knight Daniel von Dahlia. Colt and Iris are stunned, with Colt exclaiming that the creature just spoke. Iris is speechless, her eyes wide with surprise at the talking undead. Colt wonders aloud if this one has somehow retained its personality. Iris, still wide-eyed with alarm, agrees that it probably has. A second, skeletal zombie with a greatsword speaks its name, Isaiah. Its bony hand tightens its grip on the hilt of its massive sword. The skeletal knight, Isaiah, assumes a fighting stance and challenges them to a match. Iris stares in disbelief, realizing this one is also intelligent. She prepares a fireball spell, her hands glowing with magical energy. Colt calls out to Iris, telling her to wait for a moment. The undead knight, Isaiah, deftly dodges the fireball with a swift movement. The fireball explodes behind Isaiah as it leaps forward, completely unharmed. Isaiah's sword clashes against Colt's raised shield with a shower of sparks. Colt, his face a mask of determination, calls out to Louise. He tells her he will create an opening for her to attack from a distance. The undead knight roars, its jaw wide open in a silent, furious scream. Colt charges forward, his pot and shield ready for close-quarters combat. He knows that in the end, it's a biting, grappling kind of fight. He recalls Got's drilling this exact, kind of close-range fighting into him. It's a battle of footwork and distance, a lesson he knows well. He smashes his pot into the zombie's face as it cries out that it is a knight. Colt stands over the zombie, telling it that he's sorry, but they know it's secret. He reveals that he knows the knight fled from the battlefield. He taunts it, saying a true knight would not have abandoned his comrades. The knight falters and falls as Louise charges in with her spear. Louise plunges her spear into the fallen zombie's head with a powerful thrust. Colt stands over the now-defeated undead knight, its head shattered. With its last breath, the knight seems to say it was a splendid fight. Colt looks on with a grim, silent expression, the battle won. Louise kneels over the corpse, noting its leather armor is still usable. She happily declares they should take all the spoils in return. The scene shifts to their rundown house, shrouded in the darkness of night. Inside, Iris asks Colt where they should put their spoils. She gestures to the salvaged armor and clothing laid out on the floor. Colt suggests they use the empty room for storage, and Iris agrees. He sits on the stairs, his expression troubled and contemplative. He muses on the terrible contradiction of needing to fight to get better gear. Suddenly, a terrifying moan echoes from upstairs, startling him. He leaps to his feet in panic, exclaiming that it's a human voice. Iris and Colt huddle together in fear. She confirms the voice came from under the bed. Colt realizes it must be a ghost and says they need Martina for an exorcism. Outside the house, someone confirms their suspicion from the doorway. Martina stands at the bottom of the stairs, sensing malevolence and magical power. Gotts sees them and jokes that this must be their little love nest. Martina ignores him, telling them to open the floorboards and prepare for battle. A hidden trapdoor is opened, revealing a pitch-black space below. A skeletal hand reaches from the darkness, gripping the edge of the opening. An ancient, toga-clad man with a laurel crown emerges, looking pleased. He steps out, thanking his foolish descendants for freeing him after so long. Martina lunges, unleashing a reformed punch at the ancient man's face. Her punch is blocked by an invisible force. She declares it's a lich. Colt asks what a lich is, and Martina explains it's a heretic who attained immortality. Gotts yells at everyone to get ready for a fight. The lich announces his name is Gaius Julius Caesar and asks if they are his rescuers. Colt is completely shocked, stammering the impossible name Caesar. He asks Caesar if he's from Rome, wanting to speak with him. Colt eagerly asks how he came to be in this world. Caesar explains he died at the hands of Republican scoundrels. He was then reincarnated into this world by a god for his many sins. Colt realizes with a jolt that Caesar is a reincarnated person, just like him. Colt tells Caesar he knows a little about him, which intrigues the lich. He turns to Gotts, his face filled with desperate resolve, and makes a request. Gotts is incredulous when Colt suggests they make the lich an ally. Colt asks Gotts if he honestly thinks they can win their current struggles alone. Gotts glares at Colt, seething with anger at the insinuation. Colt argues that Caesar's military experience would make him a valuable advisor. Caesar listens to the exchange with a calculating, thoughtful expression. He eagerly agrees, saying he could lend his strategic eye for the right price. He adds with a sly grin that there's more to his desires. He looks towards the entrance of a building with women waiting inside. The women of a brothel welcome their wonderful old man inside. Caesar calls it a fine cultural exchange, much to Colt's embarrassment. Gotts tells the old lich not to get too carried away. He glares, stating he didn't let him out because he trusts him. Caesar looks back at him, unfazed by the guildmaster's threat. The scene shifts back to the house where the negotiation will take place. Gotts, Caesar, and the others sit around a table to discuss terms. Gotts addresses Caesar's treatment, while Caesar requests to be handled as a prisoner. Gotts reminds him sternly that he is a lich, nothing more. For the safety of the citizens, Gotts will keep him under surveillance in his own mansion. Gotts tells Caesar to accept these terms if he wants to be treated as a prisoner. Caesar speculates on Gotts's intentions based on his response. Gotts asks if there is any room for compromise in the arrangement. Caesar smiles, admitting he is an information-weak entity in this world. He raises a finger, saying he has one condition of his own. Caesar points at Colt's party, demanding they be added to his surveillance detail. Gotts erupts in fury, declaring he will absolutely not allow it. He states Iris is the youngest, and he won't send them on such a dangerous mission. Caesar swears on the name of his homeland, Rome, that he will not harm them. Gotts glares, insisting that the conditions must be upheld without fail. He holds up a written contract, telling Caesar to sign it. Caesar reads the terms. No leaving the mansion, no harming people, no learning new magic. Gotts adds one more condition, saying the current terms are too lenient. Caesar adds his own clause. Gotts must provide for his needs and not hinder him. Gotts grits his teeth and finally, reluctantly, agrees to the deal. Martina declares the matter settled and tells the others this is no business of theirs. Gotts announces they will escort the lich, who smiles smugly. Caesar tells Colt he's in charge of the rearguard, asking him to do a good job. A tearful Louise pleads with the hero, begging him not to die. Under a starry sky, the small company crosses a stone bridge into the city. They enter the noble quarter, where grand manors rise against the night. The party arrives before a large, impressive mansion, their new temporary home. Colt marvels at the opulent surroundings, realizing this is the wealthy district. Iris admires the beautiful architecture, noticing the unique blue bricks. Gotts, clearly uncomfortable, curtly says the bricks are not painted. Iris explains this special brickmaking process, a technique reserved for nobility. Caesar finds the technique fascinating, confirming this truly is another world. Gotts cuts the chatter short, gruffly announcing that they have arrived. They pass through the heavy stone archway into the mansion's courtyard. Caesar notices the main building's red bricks, asking if Gotts wasn't a noble. The question clearly irritates Gotts, whose face flashes with anger. Gotts retorts that he unfortunately lacks the refined sensibilities of a nobleman. Inside, he announces his return to the two servants waiting for him. He tells them to quickly prepare a vacant room on the second floor. He then leans in, ordering them to get the lich into a bath. Gotts complains with a grimace that Caesar's stench is unbearable. In a simple room, Colt expresses his excitement about being roommates with a lich. Colt eagerly asks Gotts just how powerful a lich truly is. Gotts warns that for a novice, a lich is as dangerous as any mage. Colt is amazed by the idea of a lich living for thousands of years. Gotts explains that liches eventually break through the normal limits of mana. He recalls legends of a single lich destroying an army of 10,000. A refreshed Caesar emerges from his bath, declaring it was a good one. Gotts impatiently tells him to stop dawdling and follow him to the room. In the sparse guest room, Gotts says it lacks elegance but will suffice. Gotts establishes a two-shift watch, assigning the first to Colt and Iris. He sternly warns Colt not to talk too much, fearing he'll be brainwashed. Gotts departs, the heavy door slamming shut behind him. Caesar smiles, noting that they can now finally speak freely. Though wary of the ancient lich, Colt agrees to the conversation. Caesar asks if Colt knows who he is, which Colt confirms. Colt reveals that, like Caesar, he is also a reincarnated person. He explains he is from about 2,000 years after Caesar's own time. Caesar is shocked by the time gap, but sees it as a convenience. He eagerly asks Colt what became of Rome after his death. Caesar questions Iris about the political system, confirming the emperor's supreme rank. He realizes the guild master's brother, the Margrave, must be incredibly powerful. Iris explains the emperor is the highest noble, with 7 elector Margraves. She continues to outline the complex hierarchy of nobility below the emperor. She adds that even the lowest noble has far greater rights than commoners. Colt, confused by this system, asks for an example. Iris describes how a noble can legally kill a commoner for a simple insult. Colt nervously reassures himself that Gotts is an exception to this harsh rule. Caesar connects the dots, understanding Gotts is the Elector Margrave's brother. He grins with manic energy, sensing a very interesting conflict brewing. The next day begins under a sky filled with fluffy white clouds. The scene shifts to the ornate, Gothic architecture of the city hall. Inside, Gotts stand before the tense and distrustful city council. A councilman begins, stating he must first confirm the city's safety. He addresses Gotts directly, his expression one of clear disapproval. Gotts grimaces, already weary of the political games about to unfold. The councilman brings up the goblin mother, noting the cave was left unsecured. He demands to know if this oversight was due to the guild's negligence. Gotts sighs, explaining that they are simply too short-staffed to do more. He insists that if they want more patrols, the guild requires more funding. The councilman dismisses his plea, stating the city's finances are limited. Another councilman asks if the Margrave will provide the necessary funds. Gotts explodes, threatening that his brother might revoke their vested interests. The chastened councilman backs down, agreeing to reconsider the funding. He warns Gotts that the Margrave's family won't control the guild forever. A noble observes that the guild master's own position is now in jeopardy. He notes that his brother is only interested in improving public safety. Gotts is merely a convenient and expendable pawn for his brother's ambitions. Gotts stands in stony silence, facing the hostile council members. He turns and leaves the chamber, curtly dismissing them. He makes his way to the formidable stone structure of Browerberg Castle. Gotts walks alone through the castle's outer gate into the bailey. He ascends a stone staircase within the castle's inner walls. At the top of the stairs, he is met by the Margrave's wife, Lady Adele. Gotts greets her politely, but she replies she was happier before seeing him. Adele announces she is leaving, entrusting the city's care to him. Gotts asks about the well-being of her son, Maximilian. She says her son will remain behind for safety due to recent unrest. Gotts seems flustered, unsure how to respond to this news. A messenger runs towards him, shouting that something terrible has happened. Gotts asks what's wrong as the man struggles to catch his breath. The messenger delivers the devastating news. The Elector Margrave is dead. The scene shifts to the exterior of Gotts's imposing stone mansion. Inside, Caesar reports that the war is over. The pretender emperor is dead. Gotts adds with anguish that his brother, the Margrave, was also killed. Caesar calmly acknowledges that this is a major, serious development. Gotts panics, realizing the guild will be abolished without his brother's support. Caesar remains calm, asking what exactly Gotts wants from him. He notes that Gotts did not seek him out just to see his face. He asks if Gotts has come to him with some kind of request. Gotts is at a loss, his mind reeling from the disastrous turn of events. He desperately asks Caesar what he should do to overcome this crisis. Caesar says his information shows most factions understand the guild's necessity. He identifies the consort, Adele, as the main obstacle to their survival. He probes Gotts, asking if the powerful Lady Adele has any weaknesses. Gotts reveals she is an old faith zealot who would force conversions. Caesar smiles, noting that the common people would surely resent that. He suggests that Gotts should be the one to incite this public anger. Gotts realizes with horror that this would lead directly to a civil war. He accuses Caesar of trying to manipulate him into starting a coup d'état. Caesar grins triumphantly, confirming that it is time for a decision. Gotts stares back, his face a mask of shock and indecision. Caesar urges him to cast aside the guild's rights to protect the people. With a solemn expression, Gotts thinks about the approaching funeral and coronation ceremony. He dismisses the guild, ordering them to continue their duties as usual for now. Colt asks Iris if the guild master seems different, but she thinks he's normal. Colt's eyes narrow with suspicion. He feels that something is definitely wrong. Veteran adventurers mutter that even with the war over, conflict still lingers. They discuss the new political reality. Lady Adele will now rule as regent. Colt turns to a companion and asks what kind of person Lady Adele is. Iris explains with disgust that Adele is an arrogant noble who despises commoners. Colt realizes Adele is from the south, a region that follows the old faith. He is shocked that a follower of the old faith married into the new faith side. Iris explains it was a political marriage where personal feelings don't matter. Colt is horrified that such a cold, family-first tradition is a reality here. Iris says the guild is tense because an old faith leader now rules them. She doubts Adele would dare try to revert everything back to the old faith. Iris smiles, sure that such an act would immediately cause a rebellion. Colt admits that as a Japanese person, he cannot understand fighting over religion. He thinks to himself that he would be happy with any food for a feast. He smiles at Iris, promising to listen more carefully during the sermons. Iris teases him, reminding him that he usually just sleeps through them. He laughingly asks Louise what she gets out of the weekly sermons. Louise strikes a cheerful pose, proudly announcing she understands nothing at all. On Sunday, a voice calls out a cheerful good morning to the guild. Inside, the battle pastor Martina begins the service for the assembled adventurers. Holding a holy book, she invites them to contemplate a passage with her. She tells of a day their savior, Nyarlathotep, appeared in disguise. The savior sat before an offering box, watching people make their donations. Many wealthy patrons came forward, giving large, impressive sums of treasure. Then, a poor widow, dressed in simple rags, quietly approached the box. She offered a single, small coin as her donation to the temple. Martina explains that Nyarlathotep then praised the poor widow for her gift. A man in the congregation looks up, surprised by this revelation. He asks if the Savior didn't praise the wealthy donors, and Martina agrees. Martina smiles gently, confirming that the Savior praised only the widow. Another man asks why the widow who gave so little received such praise. Martina calls on Wilhelm, who raises his hand, eager to answer the question. Wilhelm winks, suggesting it was because her tragic expression was alluring. He gets emotional, declaring a beautiful woman's misfortune is her greatest charm. He weeps dramatically, saying it's a man's nature to give away his fortune for her. Martina smiles, telling the sobbing Wilhelm he can consult her later. She then turns to Iris, asking for her opinion on the matter. Iris gives the correct answer. Money has a different weight for the poor. Martina nods in approval, confirming Iris's understanding is correct. She continues the story, explaining the widow gave all she had from her poverty. A single coin is pocket change for the rich, but year's food for them. Iris looks panicked, asking if their faith demands they donate everything they own. Martina reassures her that it is an extreme example about serving from the heart. Colt raises his hand, saying he has a question of his own. He asks if there's a system in Norden that requires a 1/10 tax. Martina explains that such a tithe was abolished by the new faith. This, she says, is why they fought. The old faith's tax offered no mercy. Colt finally understands that their faith is directly tied to their survival. He realizes the common citizens are fighting simply to protect their way of life. Martina concludes the service, and the congregation chants in unison. After the service, God stands grimly before the guild hall. He informs the assembled members that he has some news for them. He commands them to listen carefully as Colt and Iris look on. He announces that the Adventurers Guild might be abolished, shocking everyone. He reassures them they won't be left unemployed, offering to pay severance. However, he adds, the citizenship granted by the guild will be revoked. Colt is horrified, realizing they will no longer be able to live in the city. He panics, shouting that he only just rented his house a month ago. Gotts tells them to be prepared, as the decision will be final in 10 days. Meanwhile, Caesar tells 2 recruits he will show them the importance of training. One recruit asks incredulously if he is supposed to fight the old man. Caesar smirks, asking if the young man is afraid of him. The recruit charges, shouting that he won't hold back against the old man. He brings his wooden sword down with all his might. Caesar easily parries the blow with his own wooden sword. The recruit is thrown off balance, his weapon flying from his grasp. Caesar stands over the fallen man, calling for the next challenger. The second recruit grits his teeth, watching with frustration. Caesar taunts him, asking if he's not going to attack. He goes on the offensive, kicking the man's shield aside. He follows up with a powerful swing, a blur of motion. The second recruit is sent flying, his gear scattered on the ground. He lands hard, groaning that he has been defeated. Caesar asks the onlookers if they understand the difference training makes. He declares that an amateur cannot win. They will only be slaughtered. He raises a fist, vowing to forge them from the slaughtered into slaughterers. Colt watches, flushed with admiration, thinking that Caesar is the real deal. Iris points to a nearby wagon, asking if that is rental armor. New adventurers celebrate, amazed their wages can afford such fine training gear. Colt finds it odd to spend so much when the guild is about to be abolished. Iris agrees, her expression worried, saying the situation is unsettling. Back at the guild hall, Gotts walks onto a balcony to address everyone. The veteran adventurers watch him, their faces grim and expectant. Gotts pauses for a moment before delivering his next report. He announces that the abolition of the guild is almost certain. Their final job, he says, will be to attend the funeral and coronation. Colt laments that they will have to say goodbye to their new house. Gotts adds that there will be a parade during the coronation. He declares that they will participate and must not look foolish, so drills begin today. An adventurer questions him, asking if they are just practicing marching. Another complains, saying he doesn't want to do something like that anymore. Gotts closes his eyes, acknowledging that their reluctance is understandable. He then reveals his true plan, a direct appeal to Adele after the parade. He declares it would be a waste to disband such a disciplined unit. He tells the adventurers this is their last chance to avoid abolition. A young adventurer's face hardens with resolve at Gotts's words. Gotts grins, ordering them to assemble every morning in full armor. An officer announces they will hold an initiation during the parade for more numbers. Louise stands in a line of recruits, her head bowed in nervous anticipation. The recruits wait anxiously, their hands clasped, awaiting their official induction. Louise erupts in a cheer, having officially become a guild member. His celebration is cut short as he notices the stern-faced guild master, Gotts. Colt looks at his commander with a mix of awe and apprehension. Gotts's expression is grim and resolute. The real work is about to begin. The guild marches in formation, armor clanking with each synchronized step. Gotts bellows at the party of pot and flame to keep their pace. The veteran units, Germanica and Gallica, march with flawless, synchronized footwork. Iris stumbles, her body pushed to its physical limit by the grueling march. A veteran warrior grunts in pain, his calf muscle on the verge of tearing. Iris's face is beaded with sweat, her expression one of pure exhaustion. She spots a large camp being constructed, questioning what it is. Colt and Iris realize with a shock that it's a military encampment. These are the troops gathering for the upcoming funeral and coronation ceremony. Gotts tells them this is their chance to show the other units they're training. He declares the Adventurers Guild will train hard enough to impress everyone. Gotts orders them to take a long detour to avoid the other camp. Colt steels himself, his face set with grim determination for the ordeal ahead. The guild marches in a wide path around the sprawling military encampment. Gotts notes the camp's growth and orders an even longer detour for them. Colt is drenched in sweat, his body steaming from the relentless exertion. Gotts commands the salvation of the dead to the front in a single file line. The soldiers shift into a complex, irregular double file formation on command. With a fierce expression, Gotts orders the entire force to advance. He observes their progress, seeing them transform from levies into an elite unit. Colt, barely able to speak, looks up at his commander in desperation. Gotts's face is a mask of unforgiving authority, another command on his lips. With a roar, he orders all units to execute a full-scale charge. Colt's face is contorted in pain, sweat and grime covering his features. He charges alongside his comrades, pushing his exhausted body to its absolute limit. The commands are relentless. Retreat, then charge again until they physically collapse. Colt stumbles forward, his body finally giving out from sheer exhaustion. He screams in his mind, wondering how much longer this torture will last. From a high wall, Caesar finally addresses the troops, commending their efforts. Colt and another soldier look up, panting and utterly bewildered by the sudden stop. Caesar guarantees that their display of strength will impress even Lady Adele. With a confident smile, Caesar declares that their training is now sufficient. Colt is still gasping for air, sweat pouring down his face. At the news of a 3-day rest, the adventurers erupt in a massive cheer. The adventurers celebrate, overjoyed at the prospect of a well-earned holiday. Louise leaps into the air, ecstatic that she survived the grueling ordeal. Doris announces a feast and a bonus from Gotts for the real event. Though exhausted, Iris suggests they should go out for a celebratory drink. Swept up in the excitement, she declares they must go out and celebrate. A group of adventurers excitedly makes plans to visit the local bathhouse. Gotts watches his celebrating soldiers with a silent, unreadable expression. Night falls over the city, stars shining above the Adventurers Guild. By the fire, Caesar asks Gotts how he thinks the adventurers have changed. Gotts mentions their improved discipline, but Caesar says their morale is still lacking. Caesar explains his strategy, breaking them down to build powerful solidarity. Gotts is taken aback, remarking that Caesar's methods are truly demonic. Caesar argues that the will to fight is far more important than mere ability. With limited time, they must rely on the veterans to lead in combat. The new recruits, forged in hardship, will become a wall for the veterans. Gotts is stunned into silence by the brutal but effective logic of Caesar's plan. Caesar asks if Gotts feels sorrow for what he puts his men through. Gotts admits it's a weakness he feels he must discard to be a leader. With a sinister grin, Caesar tells him he must never discard that emotion. Gotts is completely shocked by Caesar's unexpected advice. A commander, Caesar explains, must carry his soldiers' pain to earn their loyalty. Gotts questions how a leader can function while carrying such a heavy burden. Caesar instructs him to perform, to act strong with all his might. Gotts looks at him with a dark smile, admitting he is truly a demon. Caesar's final lesson: make them believe that serving a noble is an honor. Gotts walks alone through a dark stone passageway, his lantern casting shadows. He pauses, his face cast in shadow, contemplating the demonic advice he received. The guild hall, Colt's new home, stands silent beneath the night sky. Morning light shines on the rustic, timber-framed house the party now calls home. Colt lies fast asleep, his body completely exhausted from the days of training. His eyes flutter open, heavy with sleep, as he slowly returns to consciousness. Iris and Louise greet him cheerfully, telling him he has slept until noon. He sits up, groaning that his body is incredibly stiff from the training. Iris tells him to get ready so they can head out for the day. Confused, he asks her where they're supposed to be going. She explains they must go to Vim's workshop to say their goodbyes. He agrees and quickly gets dressed, saying he'll be ready in 40 seconds. The city streets are bustling, crowded with people and market stalls. Colt looks around, remarking on how unusually lively the streets are. Iris explains that the soldiers for the ceremony are out sightseeing. Colt wonders aloud how many soldiers will gather for the parade tomorrow. Louise estimates the number is less than 2,000, which Iris finds surprisingly low. Iris explains that not all the lords are participating. Many are just observing. The soldiers are their own subjects, and few lords want to pay for mercenaries. Colt sighs, reflecting on how very medieval this world's politics are. The party arrives at a small workshop with a smoking chimney. Vim's mother greets them, mentioning she heard a rumor they were leaving town. She tells Vim to take care of them and advises them to buy supplies. Vim is embarrassed by his mother's fussing as she cheerfully excuses herself. Vim apologizes for his mother, but Colt reassures him she's a good person. Vim smiles, announcing that the armor they ordered is finally ready. Louise models her new Burgundy helmet, while Colt shows off his greaves. Vim asks Colt when he plans to leave town, while Louise admires Iris. Colt explains that he can't say for sure, as it would cause trouble. He smiles, telling Vim they will leave right after the parade is over. Vim then asks if Colt could send him a letter once he's settled. He explains that he wants to visit Colt's new home once he has one. Deeply touched, Colt happily agrees to send him a letter in the future. As they walk away, Iris smiles, happy that Colt has made a new friend. Colt sighs, lamenting that he must leave town just after making new friends. He worries intently, wondering if their direct appeal to the Margravine will actually succeed. Iris tells Louise she feels confident after all of Caesar's approved training sessions. Colt agrees, recalling their practice with formation changes and even mock assault drills. He realizes with dawning horror that their drills were essentially full combat training. His face fills with terror as he tells Iris he has realized something awful. Iris shares his horrified expression, knowing Gotz's true goal isn't a simple appeal. They understand at once. This is a coup against Adele, a point of no return. Iris explains to Colt that since her parents are citizens, she is one, too. She sadly admits that because of this, she could return to her family anytime. Colt tells her he understands and won't force her to join their rebellion. He insists she has nothing to feel sorry for if she chooses to stay behind. He says it's better to stay with family, as they may never meet again. A touched Iris admits she can't argue with him when he puts it that way. She tells Colt and Louise she will be right back after speaking to her family. That night, their new house sits under a starry sky, a single light glowing within. Inside, Colt and Louise sit in somber silence before the warm fireplace. Louise quietly eats a piece of bread, her expression subdued and thoughtful. Colt stares into the fire, lost in thought, worried about Iris's absence. He tells Louise she must forgive Iris, even if she doesn't come back to them. Louise remarks that after yesterday's training, even this simple house feels like paradise. Colt speculates that for serious reasons, Iris might decide to quit being an adventurer. He knows her family is in town and won't be exiled along with them. He concludes it is better for her to stay with family than to join them. Louise addresses him respectfully as Lord Hero, her tone earnest and understanding. She agrees to forgive Iris and thanks Colt for his kindness and consideration. A sudden noise from the door startles Colt, causing him to jump in surprise. The front door creaks open, revealing a slender silhouette against the dark night. Colt calls out, asking who is there, as Louise watches from the table. Iris stands in the doorway, beautifully dressed in an elegant evening gown. She smiles apologetically, saying she is sorry for being so late to return. A flustered Colt stammers her name, asking why she has come back to them. She explains her father tried to lock her up, but her great-aunt helped her escape. Colt, still blushing, asks if it wouldn't have been better for her to stay home. Iris closes her eyes, firmly stating that she absolutely hates that kind of life. She opens her eyes wide, declaring it's more fun with them, so she's coming. Colt is left speechless, his face flushed with emotion at her heartfelt declaration. He smiles warmly, telling her that he completely understands her decision. He looks at her earnestly, trying to find the right words for this moment. Iris looks back, a small, curious smile on her face as she waits for him. He thanks her for staying, promising to tell her something after their appeal succeeds. He thinks to himself that he will finally tell her how he truly feels. The bright morning sun signals the dawn of the fateful coronation day. The Adventurers Guild marches in disciplined columns toward the city center for the parade. The adventurers stand at attention in full armor, a sea of polished, waiting steel. A guild administrator with red hair waves, calling out that she is over here. She confirms she has found the 3 members of the Pot and Flame party. Colt, now in his kettle hat and armor, asks where Guild Master Gotts is. The administrator points toward the castle, explaining the funeral service has begun. She elaborates that only relatives are invited to the court church for the service. She explains that the guild will have to march in the parade by themselves. As the guild marches, an adventurer notices someone distributing cloth armbands ahead. He turns to Doris, the long-haired administrator, and asks what the cloth is for. Doris looks away, hesitating for a moment before giving him her answer. Colt and Iris exchange a look of silent, shared understanding and mounting anxiety. On a high balcony, Lady Adele and Earl Salzwedel observe the procession below. A noble points them out, identifying Lady Adele and the Earl's army. Another noble remarks on Lady Adele's elegant appearance, gesturing towards her. Gotts, hidden in the crowd below, watches them with a stern, calculating expression. He assesses the situation, noting Salzwedel's 500 elite troops. He identifies Adele's faction as the greatest obstacle to their planned coup. A female knight on an armored horse leads a column of soldiers through the street. Gotts watches them pass, sarcastically remarking on their supposed elegance. Earl Salzwedel looks down upon the crowd, his face a mask of cold ambition. The guild's column marches through a narrow, timber-framed street, their footsteps echoing. A cloaked figure directs a contingent of Salzwedel's troops down a side alley. A guild member notices the maneuver, questioning where the other troops are going. Another cloaked figure urgently tells the guild members to follow him this way. Doris hesitates when a soldier asks if this is the correct route to take. The soldier's face hardens with dawning comprehension as he realizes the truth. Doris looks on with a grim, determined expression, her mind now made up. She leads a group of adventurers into a secluded, brick-lined alleyway. She holds up a white armband, telling everyone she will hand these out. Colt ties the white cloth around his arm, a clear symbol of their rebellion. Doris, beside Caesar, bluntly states this is a coup led by the guildmaster. A soldier argues that Adele needs mercenaries to protect citizens from monsters. Doris clenches her fist, angrily retorting those mercenaries would also loot villages. Her eyes burn with fury as she says the guild cannot overlook this injustice. Caesar addresses the assembled adventurers, calling them a ragged but loyal group. He challenges them, asking if they will abandon Gotts, who has guided them. The adventurers roar back in unison that they will not abandon their leader. Caesar declares that if they cannot repay their debt, they are not human. He raises his hand, vowing to command them until they can rejoin Gotts. He demands to know if there are any objections to his command. None, they shout. Caesar proclaims that the die is cast, and the enemy calls them to advance. At the church, the archbishop addresses the crowd at the coronation ceremony. He speaks of God's teachings, protecting the rights of nobles and commoners equally. The young margrave, Maximilian, vows to act as their guardian and protector. The archbishop's weary eyes narrow as he prepares to challenge the new regent. The young margrave stands before the crowd, holding the ceremonial sword of office. He firmly swears his sacred oath to protect the people of Browerberg. Salzwedel smirks, turning to Lady Adele as he prepares to swear his own oath. He raises his sword high, shouting, "Long live Lord Maximilian!" to the crowd. The assembled nobles and knights echo his cry, cheering for the new Margrave. The archbishop looks over his shoulder, addressing Gotz, who stands silently behind him. The archbishop's weary, determined gaze is fixed on the unfolding proceedings. Gotz's eyes narrow, his expression grim as he waits for the perfect moment. The archbishop approaches Lady Adele, his intentions now becoming clear to all. Salzwedel steps forward, swearing his fealty to Adele as the legitimate regent. The archbishop places a hand on Salzwedel's arm, stopping him before he can finish. The archbishop confronts Lady Adele, stating he must confirm something with her. He declares that he cannot stand before her as a pastor. Adele questions the archbishop, surprised by his sudden pronouncement. He explains that the pastors are concerned about her taking office. He reminds her that the late Margrave fought for the new faith. Not only did the Margrave die, but many subjects also lost their lives. Adele, her expression hardening, asks how she can resolve their concerns. The archbishop gazes at her with a heavy, silent intensity. With a grand gesture, he demands that she convert right then and there. Adele is stunned, questioning his demand to convert before the masses. The archbishop gives a sharp, unyielding nod of confirmation. Her aristocratic fury begins to simmer just beneath the surface. The crowd murmurs at the audacity of the old hag's demand. A guild member sneers that she is just Salzwedel's puppet. Earl Salzwedel reacts with a sharp, surprised intake of breath. Adele is completely flustered, unable to form a coherent response. The crowd's whispers grow louder, questioning her closeness with the Earl. She finally snaps, shrieking at the lowly scum insulting her. She points at a man, ordering her guards to arrest and execute him. The guards exchange hesitant, uncertain glances with each other. The archbishop questions her, asking if these rumors are actually true. She loses her composure, screaming that it's not true at all. Salzwedel angrily orders the guards to arrest the man who insulted her. Gotz observes the unfolding chaos, his arms crossed and his face grim. He recognizes this as the picture Caesar wanted to create. The crowd is agitated, questioning if she is truly slandering them. The archbishop calmly suggests putting the commoner on trial first. Adele furiously rejects the idea of a trial as unnecessary. He explains that commoners have the same right to a trial as nobles. This is a core teaching of the new faith, he declares. The words strike Adele like a physical blow, her world cracking. She explodes, screaming about her noble blue blood versus their red blood. She cannot accept that the two could ever be considered equal. A horrified silence falls over the crowd as she gestures at them. The commoners stare back, their faces hard and unforgiving. Adele suddenly realizes the catastrophic mistake she has just made. The crowd watches her, their resentment now palpable. Her face is a mask of dawning horror and regret. Salzwedel facepalms, knowing her outburst has doomed them. The archbishop turns to the crowd, asking if they heard her clearly. He accuses her of trampling on the faith and their sacrifices. Adele tries to backtrack, claiming it was a slip of the tongue. The archbishop's gaze becomes hard and unforgiving. He questions how they can entrust the regency to such a person. He turns his gaze toward Gotz and the assembled adventurers. He asks Gotz if he will allow this to happen. Gotz steps forward with a heavy tread, ignoring Adele's cries. Adele calls his name again, her voice filled with desperation. He mounts a wooden platform, his presence commanding attention. With a deafening roar, he calls for the crowd's attention. He stands before them, a figure of absolute authority. A young adventurer marvels at how well his voice carries. The other adventurers agree, their attention now focused on their leader. Gotz declares that Adele has denied their faith with her outburst. How can they entrust the nation's governance to such a person? He judges her to be completely unqualified to act as regent. In her place, Gotz will take up the name of regent. The crowd erupts in a massive cheer, chanting his name. The archbishop and other nobles applaud the successful maneuver. Gotz looks on, his expression grim and determined. He orders his men to take the distraught Adele into custody. He tells a guard that the lady requires rest and careful protection. Adele looks on, a flicker of disbelief on her face. She cries out his name, her voice filled with betrayal. Salzwedel snarls that Gotz's true aim is the regency, not the elector's seat. He declares that he will not allow Gotz to usurp his legitimacy. He draws his sword, ordering his men to protect the young Margrave. A cunning, predatory smile plays across Salzwedel's face. Gotz's own expression is a mask of grim resolve. He asks Salzwedel if he just pointed a weapon at the Margrave. Salzwedel is caught, stammering a denial, his eyes wide with shock. Gotz grins, calling the Adventurers' Guild to protect their lord. Caesar, in his Roman armor, declares this a righteous war. The salvation of the dead unit forms a protective phalanx. A captain points at the advancing guild, rallying his men. He promises his soldiers a share of Salzwedel's land as a reward. He confirms that the distribution of land is the prize for victory. He orders his men to protect Adele and Salzwedel. The commoner militia charges forward, throwing rocks at the enemy. The two armies surge towards each other in the narrow streets. Salzwedel realizes Gotz's true target is the castle. He sees that Gotz is using the young lord as bait. He orders his rear guard to hold firm and the vanguard to advance. Gotz, anticipating this, vows to devour his opponent's ambition. He orders the units Pot and Flame and Ice Shield forward. Iris acknowledges the command to retreat 10 paces. Caesar orders the veteran units, Germanica and Gallica, to advance. With a ferocious roar, he leads the charge himself. His disciplined soldiers move forward with swords drawn. The two shield walls clash in a brutal, grinding melee. Steel rings on steel as the veterans engage the enemy knights. Louise shouts that her party, Pot and Flame, will charge. She cries out as she finds her mark in an enemy knight. Her spear punches through the knight's armor with a sickening crunch. Colt blocks a blow from another heavily armored knight. He and Louise fight back-to-back in the chaotic melee. They grit their teeth, holding their ground against superior numbers. From behind their protection, Iris unleashes a burst of flame. The enemy's wooden shield is incinerated in an instant. A knight gasps in shock, realizing they have magic countermeasures. A hulking knight in black armor introduces himself as Ignaz von Foster. Through his visored helm, he declares that the vermin before him must die. Iris lets out a sharp cry of alarm as the knight begins to charge. Caesar roars a command for his forces to fall back 10 paces and endure. In the chaos of the retreat, a fallen soldier is nearly trampled underfoot. The disciplined shield wall holds its ground, waiting for the right opportunity to strike. Colt mutters a curse, bracing himself as he faces the imposing Black Knight. Ignaz scoffs at Colt, calling his pot and ladle a ridiculous joke of a weapon. Colt's eyes burn with fury as he asks who the real joke is here. He leaps forward, declaring that those who threaten commoners are the true vermin. He shouts not to mock his pot, for he has killed 2 men with it. Colt's pot smashes against the knight's shield, the blow ringing harmlessly. Ignaz's superior strength easily deflects the attack, his defense unwavering. Colt grunts, staggering back from the sheer force of the knight's block. Ignaz cruelly mocks Colt, asking if his previous kills were dogs or rats. The knight sneers that Colt's arm is pathetic before raising his sword to strike. His powerful sword crashes against Colt's shield with the force of a battering ram. Wilhelm, a veteran adventurer, shouts a desperate warning to Iris. Colt glares back at the knight, his face a mask of defiant rage. He screams that Ignaz is the one who is going to be killed. The knight is momentarily stunned by the boy's unexpected, insolent defiance. A blast of magical energy from Iris slams into the knight's sword arm. Iris lets out a sharp cry, her face contorted with the effort of casting. Colt shouts her name in surprise as the powerful spell connects with its target. Iris gives a cheeky wink, reassuring him that she is fine and was only grazed. From the back lines, Other guild members shout Cult's name in concern. Wilhelm moves forward, telling Iris to get back and that he will fill the gap. Ignatz taunts Wilhelm for being protected by a woman and a piece of scrap metal. He challenges Wilhelm to come at him if he considers himself a man. Wilhelm grimly assesses his opponent, realizing the knight's skill is on another level. A messenger reports that the neutral Taub forces have officially withdrawn from the battle. Ignatz, realizing his position is compromised, orders his own men to retreat. Cult watches in surprise as the enemy line begins a disciplined withdrawal. Caesar commands his men not to falter, even if they are covered in wounds. With a look of fierce determination, he vows to end the battle with this blow. He orders his mages to prepare the flammable spell and burn the enemy to ash. Ignatz taunts Cult, saying the old faith's god wants him to kill him. Cult retorts that they have no need for such a bloodthirsty god. He worries that his wooden shield cannot block both a fireball and a sword. Gritting his teeth, Cult steels his resolve for the coming fiery assault. Caesar screams a warning that a direct volley of flammable is coming. The young Margrave, Maximilian, is ushered toward the safety of the castle. From a wooden bridge, two figures watch the enemy's relentless advance. An enemy archer wonders aloud if he can snipe the vile girl, Iris. Wilhelm stares in alarm, knowing they must do something about the shield wall. The enemy's shield wall advances, an imposing and disciplined line of steel. Caesar desperately roars, asking if any mages have power left. The battle pastor Martina reports that she has no ammunition left, her mana depleted. Caesar sighs, resigning himself to the fact that it can't be helped. With a grim, fatalistic smile, he concludes that it's all over for them. Iris calls out to Cult from the front line, asking if he is okay. He is shocked, asking why she came forward instead of staying back. She says with trembling conviction that it has already been decided. With courage in her eyes, she declares that she is the leader of Pot and Flame. Cult is stunned into silence by her brave and reckless declaration. He clenches his teeth, seeing that she is trembling with fear and exhaustion. A soldier's warning cry rings out as the fire arrows are launched. Cult lets out a primal roar of desperation against the incoming doom. His eyes are wide with terror as the fiery projectiles darken the sky. He tries to raise his pot, but his muscles fail him from sheer exhaustion. With a surge of panic, he realizes that his grip is giving out. The heavy iron pot slips from his weakened, trembling hand and begins to fall. He curses as a strange, dark energy begins to pour from the pot. He can only gasp as the energy coalesces into a dark sphere. The sphere erupts into a massive, uncontrolled blast of dark, swirling power. He screams, caught in the vortex of the pot's mysterious magical energy. Caesar, seeing the phenomenon, roars at Cult to throw the pot at the shield wall. The ancient general points directly at the target, repeating his urgent command. Filled with a surge of otherworldly power, Cult leaps up and shouts his compliance. He lets out a final, desperate cry as he hurls the pot forward. The pot soars through the air like a cannonball, trailing black energy. A soldier in the enemy shield wall tries to block the projectile with his sword. Cult watches, his face a mask of desperation, praying his aim is true. The pot continues its deadly trajectory towards the unsuspecting enemy soldier. Wilhelm yells at Cult not to wish for a hit, but to make it hit. The pot smashes into the shield wall with a devastating, explosive force. A single arrow from the blast is sent spinning wildly through the air. Earl Salzwedel stares in disbelief, muttering that it's impossible. He has no time to react as the stray arrow flies directly towards him. The arrow strikes him squarely in the eye, and he screams in agony. His men cry out in horror as their commander falls from his horse. Wilhelm, stunned, realizes that Salzwedel has been killed in action. He proclaims that Cult, the hero of the pot, has slain the enemy leader. Cult, standing beside Louise, lets out a triumphant roar, declaring their victory. The enemy knights are frozen in shock and confusion at their leader's sudden death. Caesar rallies the guild, declaring that the enemy has been forsaken by their god. The enemy soldiers report that the Earl is dead, and chaos erupts in their ranks. Lady Adele, in a panic, asks what is happening and urges them to protect Maximilian. An advisor tells her that Salzwedel can no longer command and they must retreat. Adele clutches her head in despair, wondering how it has all gone so wrong. Ignatz, his face a grim mask, gives the final, desperate order to retreat. The wounded Earl Salzwedel can only groan in pain as his army collapses. The routed enemy army flees in a disorganized mob back towards a nearby town. Caesar observes the retreat, noting how they've synchronized with the other forces. He turns his attention from the fleeing enemy to his victorious adventurers. He addresses Cult, Iris, and Louise, who stand together amidst the chaos. He congratulates them on their hard work, announcing the zealots have fled. He declares that this is their victory, and the party erupts in a joyous cheer. Iris and Louise embrace, crying with relief that they don't have to leave the city. In the aftermath, the victorious adventurers begin looting the fallen soldiers. In the aftermath of battle, Cult stands by a pile of captured armor. He cheerfully announces that this particular set of armor is for Louise. Louise, now wearing new greaves and gauntlets, thanks him profusely. She looks down at her new gear with a happy, surprised expression. She grins, admitting the chest is tight, but feels wonderfully secure. A fellow adventurer notes how much safer she looks in proper armor. Iris asks Cult why he chose not to use a shield against the fireballs. She wonders about the strange pot he used to deflect the attack. Cult admits with a bewildered look that he doesn't understand it either. He explains he just hoped the pot's magic defense could hit it back. Iris realizes the pot's many enchantments must have caused the effect. Cult grimly agrees that if he had missed, it would have been a disaster. His expression darkens as he reflects on the battle's many dangers. He admits he couldn't have beaten the Black Knight with his own strength. He tells Iris it wasn't just his life at risk, but hers too. He recalls how he nearly lost her before Wilhelm intervened to help. Gritting his teeth, he says the vanguard must get stronger to be effective. He turns to Iris, his eyes blazing with a newfound determination. He declares he will become stronger, and Iris looks on, deeply moved. Taking her hand, he vows to protect her and all their friends. He looks away, promising that when the fighting is finally over, he will be sure to tell her what he truly feels. In a stone chamber, Gotz thanks his assembled allies for their victory. A candelabra casts a flickering light over the serious war council. Gotz declares they will pursue and crush Adele's faction before they regroup. A herald advises rest, while Gotz notes Salzwedel is already recruiting troops. The ancient lich, Caesar, stands beside Gotz, analyzing the situation. Caesar observes that their allied forces are mostly impoverished knights. He calculates the enemy's numbers, totaling nearly 600 elite soldiers. He worries they must rely on volunteers to counter Salzwedel's strength. Gotz states they have no choice but to defeat him one way or another. He then asks Caesar about the status of their secret preparations. Caesar confirms that he has placed multiple orders to ensure their readiness. With a cunning smile, he says he has people working on it. The impressive stone and timber structure of the Adventurers Guild is shown. Doris addresses the guild, preparing to report the previous day's casualties. The adventurers listen with somber expressions as she details their losses. She announces that 4 of the wounded must be discharged from service. A female adventurer with a scar across her cheek wipes away a tear. Forcing a smile, she tells her comrades to send them off cheerfully. Another adventurer tearfully agrees, speaking about the nature of their lives. The scarred adventurer winks, saying they all chose a life of chance. She rallies them, declaring no one holds grudges, even in death. Cult and Iris watch the emotional scene, their own eyes tearing up. Iris looks on, moved to tears by their profound camaraderie. Cult shares her expression, his eyes wet with emotion. Doris announces that the advance guard will march out the next morning. She explains they will serve as the regent's escort with the main army. The guild members raise their mugs, wishing each other good fortune. The army marches out of the city, crossing a large stone bridge. Colt, Iris, and Louise march in formation with the other soldiers. Colt asks Iris where Earl Salzwedel's territory is actually located. He is confused, noting that they are marching north instead of west. Iris points to a map, explaining their destination is the city of Normalk. She says they will rendezvous with other forces before the invasion. Colt understands, watching the long column of soldiers march onward. They finally arrive at Normalk, a fortified city built upon a hill. A sprawling military camp is established outside the city's walls. A herald runs to announce the arrival of Lord Gottfried von Brauerberg. A knight with a prominent mustache observes Gotz, calling him a true warrior. Gotz, hearing the announcement, prepares to take command of the new forces. A blonde adventurer explains the situation to Colt's party. Colt looks on, taking in the bustling scene of the military camp. He asks the adventurer what their commander is currently doing. The adventurer explains that Gotz is organizing the disparate units. He estimates the total force will be between 1,000 and 1,500 soldiers. He gestures to the various groups of soldiers arriving at the camp. 2 captains report to Gotz. 120 soldiers and 27 volunteers have arrived. The adventurer notes Gotz must command thousands despite their varied origins. Gotz declares his intent to integrate them into a single, unified force. Colt understands that this is how a large battalion is formed. He asks where the Adventurers Guild will be assigned in this new army. The adventurer speculates they will be used as a special shock troop unit. He adds cheerfully that this means they'll need to keep training hard. Colt and Iris agree, ready to accept the challenge ahead. Gotz stands before his assembled troops, ready to begin the drills. The mustachioed knight approaches, addressing Gotz with a complaint. He argues that a knight's true purpose is a mounted charge, not infantry training. Gotz retorts that they're outmatched in cavalry and must be practical. He says that a blind charge has a very slim chance of success. The knight argues that a dismounted knight is at a severe disadvantage. He insists that it is impossible to stop a lance charge on foot. A small knight demonstrates the difficulty of bracing against a charge. The knight points out the significant difference in weapon length. He repeats that stopping a charge without bracing one's footing is impossible. He challenges Gotz, asking how he plans to overcome this problem. Gotz smirks, asking if he's unhappy about the disadvantage in reach. He declares they will solve that problem immediately, gesturing to Doris. Doris directs a soldier carrying a ridiculously oversized, massive pike. Gotz watches the scene unfold with a confident, satisfied expression. Doris holds the comically long pike, asking if Gotz is joking. The knight stammers, shocked and disbelieving at the sight of the weapon. He declares that it is absolutely impossible to handle such a long weapon. Gotz casually cleans his ear, pretending that he misheard the complaint. He sarcastically reminds the knight of his mastery of all martial arts. The knight's men agree that only commoners would struggle with such a weapon. Gotz gives a predatory grin, asking if the knights are like commoners. The knight sweats, feeling the insult to his pride and honor. His honor challenged, he puffs out his chest and vows to show them. A soldier in a helmet looks on, ready for the demonstration to begin. A disciplined line of armored pikemen stands at the edge of a forest. They gaze across a vast, open field at the opposing army's banners. Gotz smirks, declaring the enemy is fully prepared to be slaughtered. He predicts the enemy cavalry will strike their right wing first. An officer expresses disbelief at facing Earl Salzwedel's renowned knights. Gotz turns to his subordinate, mockingly asking if he is afraid. The soldiers around him swear to God that they feel no fear. The officer vehemently insists that such a thing is impossible for him. Gotz accepts his soldiers' fierce declaration with a confident look. He commands them to strike down the knights for the common people. The lead officer grimly acknowledges the order with a formal salute. The soldiers stand resolute, ready to follow their commander's orders. Gotz lets out a small, satisfied sound, his plan now in motion. Caesar observes from behind, musing that generals are willful creatures. The ancient lich notes the enemy's standard right-wing elite deployment. He sees their best forces arrayed across the battlefield as expected. Caesar tells Gotz the setup will function perfectly as a deadly trap. Gotz agrees, sensing the opportune moment to strike is approaching. He calls for the herald to step forward and deliver the proclamation. Salzwedel watches the enemy army move into position across the field. He notes with deep suspicion the complete absence of enemy cavalry. Salzwedel knows the standard tactic is placing elite forces on the right. He observes the strange unit with unusually long spears on the left. He wonders if they're dismounted knights with those bizarre weapons. The Earl is perplexed by his opponent's unconventional troop formation. He believes Gotz would not simply discard his cavalry forces entirely. He suspects the enemy cavalry is hidden behind the northern hill. A messenger arrives, announcing the herald from Earl Salzwedel's rival. Salzwedel clicks his tongue in clear annoyance at the interruption. The herald firmly tells the guards to let him pass on his duty. He announces he bears a letter from the regent, Gottfried himself. The herald nervously fumbles with the scroll, intimidated by the Earl. Salzwedel impatiently demands that the herald fulfill his assigned mission. The herald, sweating, agrees and prepares to read the proclamation. He reads the demand for Salzwedel to surrender his army at once. Salzwedel listens in a heavy silence, his expression unreadable. He dismisses the herald, telling him to return to his master. Salzwedel snarls that he now has no choice but to take up his sword. He furiously vows to slaughter them all and fertilize the land. The Earl rears his horse, declaring his final message is finished. The terrified herald can only stammer his acknowledgement and flee. Gotz orders his right wing and central crossbow units to advance. He notes the enemy has moved their right wing, as he expected. He commands his left wing and center to advance and open fire. The crossbowmen advance, firing volleys from behind large pavis shields. The disciplined soldiers fire and reload in perfect, deadly formation. Gotz orders the center to attack, while the right wing harasses. The two armies' infantry lines clash in a chaotic melee of swords. The adventurers recognize the opposing forces as the Rothwald army. Gotz senses the enemy's movements are too slow, a deliberate lure. He analyzes the map, realizing a flank attack is a clear trap. He knows Salzwedel's reputation is for powerful, overwhelming attacks. Gotz understands this cautious probing is completely out of character. The enemy's feint is a clear sign of a waiting trap. He realizes with certainty that Salzwedel is trying to lure him in. Gotz deduces the enemy cavalry is hidden in ambush behind the hill. Salzwedel mockingly tells his men the enemy uses crafty long spears. He scoffs at anyone who would feel uneasy about such a tactic. He rears his horse, vowing to show them true knighthood's might. The order is given to charge forward into the heart of the fray. The cavalry thunders across the field, their banners flying high. The armored knights lower their lances, their war horses straining. They scream that they fight because they possess noble pride. The pikemen brace themselves, forming a solid wall of deadly points. A soldier's eyes widen in terror behind his helmet's narrow visor. Another soldier gasps in horror as the charge bears down on him. The first knight crashes into the pike wall with sickening force. The cavalry charge is broken, knights impaled on the long spears. A knight is thrown from his horse, his body twisting in midair. A pikeman grunts with effort, holding the line against the impact. A captain scoffs that the spears are coming in just as always. He declares that such soft-headed spears will not work on them. He sneers that the weapon is only effective against peasant levies. The knights are surrounded and cut down by the guild's infantry. A dying knight screams for help as his life ebbs away in the dirt. Salzwedel, seeing the slaughter, screams the order for a full retreat. Caesar praises Gotz for his splendid response to the cavalry charge. Gotz admits with a wide grin he did not expect such success. Caesar replies he was confident in the ancient, time-tested tactic. Gotz asks what the name of this particular strategy is called. Caesar asks with a sly grin if he truly wants to know its name. He reveals the name of the formation, the mighty phalanx. Caesar explains it's an anti-cavalry tactic that relies on willpower. He tells Gotz it is time to commit the reserves and win. Gotz agrees, declaring that this is the decisive moment of battle. He orders the 1st Infantry and Adventurers Guild to charge forward. Colt charges forward, smashing an enemy soldier to the ground. His eyes wide with battle fury. He realizes this is his 3rd kill. He knows he may need to use Alhazard's forbidden blade once more. Salzwedel and Adele retreat on horseback toward a nearby town. Salzwedel looks back at the battlefield, his face grim and defeated. He realizes the true trap was the dismounted pikemen all along. He mutters to himself that it was a complete and utter failure. Adele panics, demanding he reform the troops immediately to fight. She insists righteousness is theirs and they cannot possibly lose. Salzwedel calmly tells her to face reality. They have lost the battle. Adele cries out in despair, asking what will become of them now. Salzwedel decides they will retreat to Nassau and make a last stand. Adele asks with desperation if he thinks they can win there. Salzwedel looks away, his heavy silence a grim and final answer. On the blood-soaked field, a knight declares that everything that could be done has been done. He informs a noblewoman he will now take command of the vanguard. The woman, Lady Adele, watches him, a look of shock on her face. She remains on her horse, observing as he rides away across the field. In the aftermath, a soldier cheers that the traitorous Earl Salzwedel has fled. Gotz, his face a grim mask, orders his men to inform the entire army. He raises his sword over the fallen, declaring the pursuit of Salzwedel and the siege of Nassau. Iris asks Colt how long the war will last, hoping for a surrender. Colt replies that their enemy is not the type to let things end easily. The sky is filled with clouds as the scene transitions. The camera pans down, revealing the rooftops of a medieval city. Gotz's army marches through the timber-framed streets of Nassau City. He stands before his assembled troops, addressing them as gentlemen. His face is a mask of grim determination as he announces the final battle is at hand. He will offer one last demand for surrender before beginning the assault. He orders Colt's group to join the first wave, and they acknowledge the command. The imposing stone walls of the castle loom before them. Inside, a herald delivers the ultimatum to Earl Salzwedel and the Knight Ignatz. Salzwedel, his back to the herald, states that his answer is final. The herald acknowledges the refusal, asking if there is any other message. The Earl turns his head, his expression cold and silent. He declares with chilling finality that his army will fight to the last man. Salzwedel turns to his loyal knight, addressing him as Ignatz. He gives the order to prepare the archers for a devastating volley. Ignatz's eyes narrow within his helmet as he accepts the command. A storm of fire arrows rains down, setting the entire city ablaze. Watching the inferno, Iris cries out that Salzwedel is burning the town. Gotz roars for the guild to begin firefighting and evacuate the citizens. His face contorts with pure rage as he curses the Earl's cowardly act. His fury is so great it fills the panel with a stylized roar of "that bastard." He rallies the adventurers, ordering them to grab buckets and save the city. He reorganizes his forces into 10-man units to patrol the burning streets. He bellows that they will restore order with their own strength. Colt, Iris, and Louise watch, their faces a mixture of shock and resolve. Inside a safe house, Salzwedel calmly watches the destruction from a window. Ignatz reports that the city's militia has already surrendered to their forces. The Earl simply acknowledges the report, his gaze still fixed on the flames. Ignatz asks if they should proceed with their plan as discussed. Salzwedel muses that the commoners will no longer obey a lord who burns their city. Ignatz suggests a plan to buy time and drain Gotz's funds, which Salzwedel approves. The Earl walks away, saying he is returning and to send word if anything changes. Amidst the smoldering ruins, Doris reports that the fires have been put out. Gotz, his face covered in soot, asks for her next report. Doris hesitates for a moment, her expression grave. She informs him that their funds can only sustain the army for a few more days. Gotz grimly notes that borrowing money here will come at a high price. The ancient lich, Caesar, grins maniacally, finding the dire situation thrilling. He declares they must quickly find a way to win without going bankrupt. He claps Gotz on the shoulder, proclaiming it is time for a decision. Gotz listens intently, the weight of command heavy on his shoulders. That night, a group of cloaked figures gathers in the woods outside the castle. Their commander announces their mission, a surprise attack to take Salzwedel's head. Colt and Iris, hidden beneath their hoods, look on with wide, anxious eyes. The commander explains that scaling the cliffs with ropes is their only way in. Their goal is to open the gate and join the main army in a pincer attack. Another adventurer grins, commenting on how incredibly dangerous the plan is. The commander agrees, stating such a special mission requires his best warriors. He smiles, telling them he trusts them completely and them alone. Colt's face flushes with pride as he whispers the commander's title. From a first-person view, a gauntlet hand is raised, signaling the advance. Elsewhere, a squad prepares to smash the front gate with a battering ram. The heavy log thunders against the reinforced wooden doors of the fortress. From the woods, the commando team sees that the main assault has begun. An archer unit provides covering fire for the soldiers at the gate. Arrows rain down on the battlements, striking down the castle's defenders. The commandos prepare their three-pronged, grappling hooks for the ascent. They hurl the hooks, which soar through the night air towards the walls. The infiltration team's leader yells for his unit to begin the climb. The cloaked figures scale the sheer stone face of the fortress. Inside, veteran adventurers secure the gatehouse, ready to let the army in. The commander orders Colt's team to hold off any enemy reinforcements. The adventurers, ready for battle, spread out to secure the narrow corridor. Colt takes cover as an enemy soldier appears around the corner. The soldier, caught unawares, is muttering about needing to find a toilet. With a brutal smash of his pot, Colt silences the man permanently. He grimly notes that in this world, one can't even relieve themselves. A squad of enemy knights charges down the corridor to meet them. The armored soldiers pour through a doorway, intent on repelling the attack. From a balcony, Martina announces they will press on while the entrance is chaotic. Colt worries that their small number is too dangerous for the castle stairs. Martina reassures him, saying the stairs are designed to be defended by a few. A guard leaps down from above as Colt prepares to swing his pot. Yelling for him to duck, Martina uses Colt's head as a springboard. She soars through the air, bringing her heavy mace down on the guard. Having broken through, she and Colt continue their run deeper into the castle. They race up a winding stone staircase toward the throne room. They burst into the great hall to find Earl Salzwedel waiting for them. The Earl looks up from his throne, calmly acknowledging their arrival. Martina informs him that the fortress is lost and further resistance is futile. She looks upon the defeated lord with a hint of pity. Salzwedel dismisses her plea to surrender as utterly meaningless. He turns his head, questioning her choice of the word meaningless. He concedes that, for a commoner, her words might seem to hold some truth. Martina tells him that Lord Gotz is a compassionate man. She promises that if he surrenders, he will be treated honorably as a noble. Salzwedel's face contorts in a sneer as he tells her not to mock him. He rises from his throne, declaring that he has no fear of execution. He draws his sword, proclaiming he has decided to die for his own ego. A sad smile touches Martina's lips as she repeats his words. For your ego. Salzwedel states the idle talk is over, as the one he was waiting for has arrived. In the burning city square, the final duels are about to begin. The defeated Earl Salzwedel takes his stance, ready for a final battle. A gauntlet lies on the cobblestones, a formal challenge for a duel. Salzweddel's men and allies protest this reckless decision. A loyal soldier begs his lord not to accept the pointless fight. The battle pastor Martina insists a duel is entirely unnecessary now. Gotz watches his opponent with a cold, determined stare. Salzweddel removes his helmet, preparing to meet his fate with open eyes. A grim, fatalistic smile crosses the Earl's scarred face. He formally thanks Gottfried for accepting his challenge to the death. Salzweddel asks only for the honor of a glorious end in battle. Gotz gives a cruel smirk, denying him that final honor. He snarls that he will make the Earl grovel before killing him. Salzweddel turns to Adele, telling her he will die here now. A horrified Adele protests his selfish decision, refusing to allow it. The Earl dismissively tells her to do as she pleases. He then frees his knight Ignatz, thanking him for his long service. Ignatz declares that he too will follow his own knightly ego. He turns his visor gaze toward a startled Colt. Colt raises his pot, vowing to fight his opponent to the death. Salzweddel scoffs at Ignatz's decision, calling him a fool. Ignatz calmly accepts the Earl's insult as a final compliment. The two pairs of warriors face each other, ready for battle. Salzweddel's eyes burn with intensity as he asks to begin. Gotz meets his gaze, agreeing it's time to start the fight. With a clash of steel, the commander's duel begins in earnest. A soldier's blade is shattered by a powerful, overwhelming blow. Gotz and Salzweddel are locked in a furious bind of crossed swords. Gotz strains, holding back the Earl's powerful and desperate attack. Salzweddel demands to know how they breached the fortress gates. Gotz reveals that he sent adventurers to scale the high cliffs. The Earl lets out a great, booming laugh of bitter irony. He finds it amusing to be defeated by those he once expelled. Pressing his attack, he asks how long Gotz's army can last. Gotz confidently replies that they will hold out until tomorrow. Salzweddel is momentarily stunned by his opponent's unwavering confidence. He thinks his own speed gives him the advantage in this fight. The Earl lunges forward, believing he has landed the winning blow. Meanwhile, Ignatz asks Colt if he has truly practiced with his sword. He warns the boy not to disappoint him by dying too quickly. Colt gives a confident grin, saying he has a plan. He knows how to defeat a foolish knight, blinded by his own pride. With a grunt, he slams his shield into the overconfident knight. From the sidelines, Iris calls out that she will provide cover. Colt yells back, promising he will create an opening for her spell. Iris watches her friend, her heart filled with trust and admiration. Colt's pot rings as it blocks a heavy downward slash from Ignatz. The enraged knight screams at the boy to give up and die. Colt knows their difference in skill is far too great. He admits to himself that he cannot land a blow alone. He continues his thought, realizing there is still a chance. He knows that simply making the knight lower his guard is possible. He grits his teeth, determined that even he can accomplish that much. He entangles the knight's sword with his ladle as Louise appears. The young hunter charges forward, her iron spear aimed true. Ignatz is shocked to find his sword arm has been trapped. Louise's spear finds a gap in his armor, and he curses loudly. The knight roars in fury at being wounded by a simple spear. Colt yells to Iris that the opening has been made. Iris confirms she is ready to unleash her magic. Colt infuses his pot with dark, swirling energy for a final strike. Ignatz bellows, telling him not to underestimate a true knight. Colt roars back that the knight should not underestimate a commoner. His eyes wide with manic energy, he prepares the final blow. In the other duel, Salzweddel is shocked as he disarms Gotz. He realizes too late that he has been tricked by his opponent. A dagger, thrown by the dying Ignatz, strikes him in the leg. Salzweddel understands now that Gotz's exhaustion was just an act. The wounded Earl falls to one knee, his advantage completely lost. Gotz looms over him, preparing to end the fight for good. Colt stands over the fallen Ignatz and declares that it is over. Gotts runs the defeated Salzwedel through, ending the rebellion. Amidst the smoke and flames, Gotts and Colt stand victorious. Colt allows himself a small, weary smile of triumph. The guild master gives a tired but satisfied grin. Martina rushes forward, pleading with Lady Adele to wait. Adele holds a dagger to her chest, telling them not to interfere. Sobbing, she says she would rather die than face humiliation. Colt lunges forward, using his forbidden magic one last time. The invisible force of his spell shatters the dagger's blade. Adele gasps as the broken dagger falls from her hand. Colt looks on grimly, knowing he had to use the forbidden blade. A soldier reports that Salzwedel is dead and Adele is captured. The commander raises a banner, declaring an end to the war. A soldier announces it is time to divide the spoils of victory. A fellow adventurer notices Colt hesitating, asking if he is coming. Iris turns to Colt, wondering why he is not joining the others. Blushing, Colt begins to speak to her with earnest intensity. He says he promised to tell her something if they won the battle. He drops to one knee and asks her to marry him. His eyes are filled with hope as he repeats his heartfelt proposal. Iris is utterly stunned, whispering his name in disbelief. The goddess Nibirius appears, commenting on the turn of events. She notes that he has finally resolved to live in this world. Colt, filled with a new confidence, shouts his agreement. Nibirius gives a serene, knowing smile, saying, "Very well." With a final, playful wink, her divine form vanishes. Colt turns back to Iris, gently asking for her answer. Iris's face breaks into a radiant smile as she happily accepts. The newly engaged couple embraces, sharing a moment of pure joy. A veteran adventurer crudely asks the blushing Colt about his romantic plans for the night. Amidst the carnage, Colt swings his pot, roaring for his enemies to truly fight him. Daily skirmishes and murder are the reality for adventurers who entrust their lives to heaven. The goddess sighs blissfully, loving her adventurers and the brutal, hard-boiled world she created. Her expression turns cold as she declares that the weak have no place in this world. She observes the world's powerful women, like a mage wreathed in fire or a pastor wielding an iron mace. She sees the tough female warriors of the guild, a match for any armored man. These confident warriors are ready to make any who dare challenge them eat utter filth.